Chapter 1234. Turn off your phone and go to sleep. The next morning, Yu Hong and the rest of the Tianguang group's 4 great generals heard that Chen Guang had finally returned to the company. They did not dare to be careless and waited outside Chen Guang's office early in the morning. As the boss of such a large company, Chen Guang's office was well equipped with facilities in the break room. Stretching his body on the 3-meter bed, Chen Guang leisurely got up and washed up. When he was done cleaning up, he opened the door to his office and was about to order some breakfast. However, he saw the 4 great guardian warriors standing outside looking at him. "Boss, you're back." Lu Xiaoyang reacted the fastest. He appeared in front of Chen Guang almost as soon as he opened the door and greeted him respectfully. The other 3 rolled their eyes when they saw Lu Xiaoyang take the lead again. However, they were not slow and their attitude was quite on point. Chen Guang wanted to go downstairs, but since the 4 of them were already there, he had to make things clear first. Therefore, he waved his hand and said, "Come in. It looks like you guys have a lot to talk to me about." The 4 of them wanted to say something after entering the door, but stopped. Chen Guang waved his hand first. "Let's talk about the company first. I heard some things last night, and I need you guys to tell me more in detail." When the 4 of them heard Chen Guang's words, they instantly understood that Yu Hong was the first to report the company's recent developments to Chen Guang. Although the world had changed, Tianguang Group was doing quite well. It seemed to be even better than in the old world. Apart from the businesses that Chen Guang had developed in the past, Tianguang Culture, which was a subsidiary of the company, not only had Jin Shuriwei and Jiang Yage, but also dozens of first-rate, second-rate, and third-rate artists in the country. There were even more trainees. Unlike the old world where China's entertainment industry was completely dominated by Europe and America, thanks to China's strong national strength in the New World, the Chinese language was very popular around the world. It even seemed to surpass English. The influence of China's A-list and super-list artists overseas could not be underestimated. Tianguang Culture's market value had reached tens of billions just from the management contracts of some of the top artists. In addition, unlike in the old world, where Tianguang Media had many IP resources that had yet to be developed, in the new world, the company perfectly integrated Tianguang Culture's artist resources with Tianguang Media's IP resources, making the development of the company's resources extremely smooth. Apart from the current global hit variety show Hi, My God! In addition, the Tianguang Group was behind many popular TV shows and movies in the world. Of course, the main resources of the company's headquarters were still poured into Chen Guang, and they went all out to develop the valuable assets left by Chen Guang. Everything he had done in the past was an IP that the company could develop. Every image he left behind could be extended to many variants of IP addresses. For example, the miracle he had left on the Hong Kong racetrack had even been adapted into a movie, which had been completed and was about to be released. The male lead was the company's A-list top star. Of course, he could not be the kind of fresh meat who had no acting skills. He had to be a well-known actor who was slightly older than Chen Guang's actual age. In addition, the piano recordings he had played had already been sold all over the world after obtaining the piano music copyright. Women, which had just been screened in North America, could still generate tens of millions of yuan in profits every day in other continents around the world. The market derived from the audiovisual materials and copyrights was even wider. It was simply a money-making machine. In addition, some of the pencil micro-carvings that Chen Guang had left behind had been placed in many museums around the world. As many people went to visit them, the rentals of these works of art were not free, and they were also generating profits. The Huaxia Arts Academy, which was jointly funded by Tianguang Group and Xianqing's Xinjue sect, had also been officially operating. There were branches in major cities all over the country, and they were only free of charge for talented students. If ordinary people wanted to learn, they would have to pay the tuition fees themselves. Successful students had 2 choices. They could consider joining the Xinjue sect, or they could develop in the direction of professional darts. Even if they chose neither, at least they would have an additional skill that seemed useless in life, but would be like a fish in water when they enter the game. Well, you've done a good job. I'm very satisfied. After listening to Yu Hong's report, Chen Guang nodded with satisfaction. No wonder the rich often got richer, and it was harder for the poor to make a comeback. Wasn't this the reason? When the accumulation of personal wealth and resources had reached a certain level, he didn't need to spend too much energy. He only needed to make a decision on a big decision, and he could get rich without doing anything. Tianguang Group was not like an ordinary listed company. There were no equity disputes, and there was no fear of market turbulence. He could completely sit back and relax. After that, Fang Tianyu and Lu Xiaoyang also reported on the internal and external affairs that they had been in charge of recently. In fact, it was not that Chen Guang had become interested in managing the company. He was just curious. In the old world, the two of them had been busy with women in Europe and the United States. Chen Guang had only returned a little earlier. After listening to the two of them, Chen Guang could not help but applaud the perfect fusion of the old world and the new world. The two of them had been in the United States and back at the same time as in the old world. Whether Chen Guang was in seclusion or not did not affect the two of them from fulfilling their duties. Be it the screening of women, the copyright operation of the drama Romeo and Juliet, or the overseas promotion of the variety show High God, the two of them had not missed a single one. They had done more than what Chen Guang had requested and more than what they should have done. For example, as the head of the public relations and publicity department, Lu Xiaoyang could lie down and do nothing under normal circumstances if he did not want to manage things. However, he had never been idle. In fact, he did not even need Chen Guang to make arrangements for him. He could find Chen Guang's needs and take the initiative to do things. For example, during the movie's release period, Tianguang Group's product output would also be accompanied by the extension of Chen Guang's personal brand. In that case, they had to pay attention to the public opinion regarding Chen Guang. Where there were people, there would be people, and where there were people, there would be benefits. If Chen Guang's Tianguang Group wanted to obtain more benefits, it would inevitably occupy the space of others. Just like the movie market, the logic seemed simple. If a movie was filmed well, there would naturally be attendance. If there was attendance, there would naturally be showtimes, and there would naturally be box office sales. It could only be said that the above logic was too simple. It was the same everywhere in the world. There were only so many cinemas, and the audience only had 24 hours a day. If one movie occupied a high number of showtimes, the other one would naturally have a low number of showtimes. There were countless similar situations. Therefore, even though Chen Guang's reputation were at its peak, those who disliked him or felt that they had a conflict of interest with him had always thought of ways to discredit him. Otherwise, it was impossible to know a person's heart. There were 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 people's eyes. A person could never be liked by everyone at the same time. Master Fan had once said that the amount of praise one could take was the amount of slander one could take. In other words, there were as many people who liked him as there were people who hated him. Perhaps there were more people who liked him, but it was undeniable that there were still people who hated him. Especially now that China was powerful in the New World, and the influence of Chinese stars was even greater. Correspondingly, there were more overseas fans than in the Old World, and there were also many overseas haters. The fighting power of the imported haters was not inferior to that of the domestic haters. In the past 2 months, Lu Xiaoyang had been busy enough. He had almost died from overwork. If not for, all right, that's all I know about the company's regular business. By the way, I heard that a lot of people resigned some time ago, but recently they wanted to be reinstated. Then, many people submitted their resumes to our company at almost the same time. They even wanted to work without pay. What do the four of you think about this? Finally, Chen Guang got straight to the point. As he spoke, he also looked at the four's expressions. At the moment, he was not sure if all four of them had awakened as players. He could only test the waters first. Chen Guang was not afraid of being punished by the game. He had no secrets now. However, he had another worry. He was said to be an S-rank player, and his attributes were too strong. If ordinary people heard about it, it would cause them to have their memories reset. Wouldn't that be a scam? The four Vajras looked at each other. They could read from each other's eyes that a huge burden had been lifted from their hearts. This time, it was Yu Hong's turn to speak. Boss, those who resigned were all players. Those who submitted their resumes were also players. Yu Hong did not hide his words from the other three people. Chen Guang grinned. So, it seems that the four of you are also players? Yes, boss. That's right. Lu Xiaoyang said, Boss, we are very strong. Fang Tianyu said, Boss. Dog 3's awakened ability is transformation. Chen Guang was very curious. He had never seen a transformation ability before. Transformation into what? Fang Tianyu chuckled. Three-headed Pekingese. Lu Xiaoyang was furious. Go to hell. What do you know? My ability is called the Infant Three-Headed Hellhound. Chapter 1235. So scary, so scary. Even my sister's poodle at home is louder than you. Let's not talk about your teeth. We asked you to bite the weakest monster, but you almost beat it into a husky. If we didn't save you in time, you would have died on the spot. Fang Tianyu was not afraid of the angry Lu Xiaoyang at all. He was still very arrogant. Believe it or not, I will bite you to death. Lu Xiaoyang turned around and looked at him fiercely. It seemed he would pounce on Fang Tianyu and bite him. Suli suddenly said, Fang Tianyu, stop mocking Lu Xiaoyang, you lighter. At least the three Pekingese can do some scouting in the mission. You're the one who's completely useless. Right? When I fight, at least I can bite people. When I have nothing to do, I can transform myself to spy on the situation. Although my three heads don't look very elegant, they can see everything and hear everything. Your stupid lighter can only be used to light a fire when people are hungry and want to eat barbecue. I'm not bragging, but I have learned how to survive in the wild. Even without you, I can still make fire by drilling wood. It is obvious that you, Fang Tianyu, are just like a fire stick. Damn, I will burn you to death. I will bite you to death. Yu Hong couldn't stop the two people who were about to fight with each other. Finally, Chen Guang coughed slightly, and the two people quieted down immediately. Enough. Both of you shut up. The eldest brother has as many pockmarks on his face as the second brother. Oh, by the way, there is something I'm very interested in. Everyone else, shut up. Let me tell you. Hearing Chen Guang's order, Buttface and Fang Tianyu finally quieted down. However, they still looked at each other with annoyance. Chen Guang didn't know what to do with these two enemies. Then he turned around and looked at Yu Hong. Yu Hong lowered his head and coughed awkwardly. He felt quite embarrassed. Boss, you can ask me anything. I'm the leader of our team. Basically, I know everything. Well, according to what you said, the four of you are in a team, right? Did you guys get 14 contracts? Chen Guang was very surprised. Didn't the data show that there were at most 3 people in a human team? Does this mean that these 4 fellows silently walked to the front of everyone? So awesome? Could the old man's Tianguang group produce such a talent? This time, the way Chen Guang looked at the 4 of them was worth pondering. It was as if he was appreciating their potential. It was the old man who was rash. The old man had underestimated you. Boss, this matter is very strange. We also know about the existence of the party contract. Everyone else has to sign the contract before they can be assigned to the same mission every time. According to the statistics of some of the core members of the company, there have been at least hundreds of different game spaces. But we seem to have completely violated this rule. We are always together, but the others are not like this. Yu Hong explained further. Chen Guang pondered for a moment. This matter is a little strange, but it's already an established fact. There's no need to keep dwelling on it. Boss, you are wise. Fang Tianyu raised his arms and shouted decisively. Chen Guang and the others turned around and looked at him. Chen Guang couldn't help but say, Fang Tianyu, your flattery is a little embarrassing, isn't it? I'm just spouting nonsense. Fang Tianyu laughed. A little bit. Chen Guang asked again, by the way, you said that there are other players in the company? How many are there in total? Yu Hong was still handling this matter. There are about 20 to 30 registered players, but I guess it's definitely more than that. There are more than 30 people who resigned and want to be reinstated. Boss, you know that we can't let ordinary people know that we are players easily. So it's very difficult to determine whether they are players or not. Okay, I got it. I'll handle it later. First, tell me about your awakened abilities. The 4 of them said one after another. Lu Xiaoyang was indeed a three-headed hellhound in the transformation department. The baby in his mouth did look like a Pekingese, but according to him, his awakened ability had a lot of room for growth. If he was lucky enough to live to S level, the real three-headed hellhound in golden armor would be born. At that time, his body would be bigger than a mammoth. It was said that he could run as fast as lightning, and his claws and fangs could even break gold and stones. It was said that when he reached the peak, he could also master the ultimate ability of the Demon Clan, the legendary space travel skill. As for Fong Tianyu, he was insulted by others as a lighter just now. His ability was called Flame Spirit. It was said that when he became powerful, he could turn his whole body into flames and be completely immune to physical attacks. The higher the level of the ability, the higher the temperature of the flames and the wider the coverage. As a veteran who had watched the One Piece cartoon, Chen Guang pointed at Fong Tianyu and gave him a new nickname, Ice Fang D Mud Howl. However, Fong Tianyu felt that Chen Guang's statement was biased. He always believed that he was a noble high elf, and he even added the title of prince. He also insisted that somewhere outside the game, there was a kingdom waiting for him to inherit, and he would become the legendary Flame Spirit King. Su Li's ability was not as external as Fong Tianyu's and Lu Xiaoyang's. Even if he used it, no one would know. Su Li's work in the real world had given him an extremely strong logical thinking ability. In the game, his ability in this aspect was displayed to the extreme. However, it wasn't a simple analysis. Instead, he was able to intuitively see through the situation in front of him, from the ways of the world to the changes in the environment, and predict what would happen next. Right now, he was only at level E, so he could only foresee what would happen 1 minute later. However, this was already quite terrifying for a game mission. This was also the main reason why the four of them could survive the game without any injuries from the very beginning, even though they were only at level E, and they could see level D right in front of them. It was said that if he was promoted to S level, he could even predict what would happen 1 day later in the game. This would make him invincible. In addition, Yu Hong's ability seemed to have the least combat power, but everyone agreed that this was the most bug-like ability. Even Yu Hong himself could not stand it. Players could spend reward points in the game to buy items or upgrade their abilities. For example, upgrading from E level to D level required 20 reward points. However, Yu Hong's ability was very strange from the beginning. It was very similar to the ability of a capable minister in the glorious Three Kingdoms. The explanation card stated that through a more reasonable and detailed distribution, he could spend less reward points in the shop. Yu Hong himself did not know how detailed this so-called detailed distribution was, but the effect was obvious. Now, if you were to spend it in the shop, for example, from E level to D level ability enhancement, the original price would be 20 and the current price would be 10% off, and it would only be 18. You would not be fooled by 18 yuan, and you would not suffer a loss if you bought it. Ahem, in short, if Yu Hong could reach this level, he would be able to spend a terrifying 50% off. If there was a boss behind the shop system, he would tremble at the sight of Yu Hong. This was simply terrifying. Many a little makes a mickle. Just this ability of Yu Hong's was enough to develop an entire team. After listening, Chen Guang pretended to be calm, waved his hand, and said, "That's it for today. I will think of something later. You guys go ahead." After understanding the situation, Chen Guang said goodbye to the four of them. He was a little hungry, so he decided to go and have breakfast first. When he went downstairs, he thought to himself, "My 4 King Kongs are all ruthless characters. Although these 4 guys looked like noobs now, their ability combination was really a natural big team boss level." In addition, it seemed that this so-called game space had been modified. In the game setting of the killing mission, players did not have abilities when they were E level. After the first enhancement, they would become D level, and then they would have different abilities. But now, it seemed that everyone was given an initial ability when they first entered the game. Players did not have the right to choose freely. This was both a good and a bad thing. There was basically no change in the price level. It seemed that to upgrade from D level to C level, they would have to prepare at least 2,000 points. In addition, with the intelligence and ability of this team of 4, They had gone through a total of 4 game missions so far, and yet they had not accumulated 18 points per person. It was simply unbelievable. Chen Guang did not experience the current game mission himself. He could only guess that after the modification, the difficulty of the game had decreased, and, at the same time, the rewards had been weakened to a certain extent. It was very difficult for players to improve their abilities. In short, it was the first game mission that he personally led a team to experience. It should be the legendary super difficult version of the game. The rewards were generous, and the difficulty was exaggerated. If it wasn't for him, not to mention the human race, even the Protoss led by Yu Ting would have been wiped out. It sounded like it was very powerful, but how strong could the old man, who was now an S level, be? While stuffing fried dough sticks into his mouth, Chen Guang could not help but complain to himself. Am I already abnormal? Why am I suddenly looking forward to the game mission? No, this is an illness, I have to treat it. Speaking of treatment, what has Sister Tang Ying been busy with recently? Chapter 1236. It was rare for him to take the initiative to call Tang Ying, but it was an empty number. Chen Guang was baffled. He had no idea what was going on. Maybe Tang Ying had changed her number after the world integration, but he couldn't follow up on it? Or maybe she had changed her number on purpose to focus on her work because the Biology Research Institute that she created with Moorlands and Gokyo University had officially started operating. However, based on Chen Guang's understanding of Tang Ying, if all 4 of Tianguan Group's leaders could awaken and become players, then there was no reason for her to fall behind. So, as long as she became a player, it was impossible for her to remain unmoved after reading the 4th episode of God of Joy. But why didn't she contact him? Forget it. She must have her own reasons. If it really didn't work out, he could go to the police station to look for Sister Wu Tong. The 2 of them are best friends, so he couldn't possibly not contact her. Also, he could observe Sister Wu Tong's current situation. Maybe she was also implicated. After making up his mind, Chen Guang focused his attention back on the players in Tianguan Group. According to Yu Hong's description, there should be more than 50 players in the company. There were 300 employees in the company, and more than 50 players. Chen Guang was stunned. The number of players was way too high. He could only hope that it was a coincidence. If it was a common occurrence, it would be really scary. After breakfast, Chen Guang didn't return to the company, but went straight to school. An hour later, Chen Guang, Sun Xiaoxuan, Lin Jingwei, Bai Fan, Xiong and Gao Ye met up in the woods by the Yuanming Lake. Chen Guang was mentally prepared that his 3 best friends could awaken and become players, but he didn't expect Sun Xiaoxuan and Gao Ye to be involved as well. This was unexpected. That was not the end of it. When these people entered the mission space, they were in the same situation as the 4 people from the Tianguan Group. In fact, it was even more exaggerated. Because there were 5 of them, they were always assigned together when they entered the mission space without signing a team contract. In addition, the 5 of them displayed amazing talent in the game. The average strength of the 5 of them was even stronger than the 4 King Kongs, and Sun Xiaoxuan's initial ability was D rank. No one expected that the gentle and modest Sun Xiaoxuan's awakened ability would be so explosive and destructive. In the game, when her ability was activated, she could turn anything she touched into a bomb and throw it out. This was not the most abnormal part. What was even more abnormal was that this ability of hers had a crushing effect on low-level phantom beasts. When she faced an E-level phantom beast, not only was she not afraid of it, she could even turn it into a bomb and explode on the spot. With her ability, the 5-man team had once dealt with a group of E-grade phantasmal beasts that even a C-grade Protoss player would have to think twice before dealing with. Then, with Sun Xiaoxuan's explosive skills, they forcefully withstood the attack of the large wave of phantasmal beasts. The team had gained a lot, and now all of them were D rank. Lin Jingwei's ability was that of an elemental magician who could control the water element. After reaching D rank, he had grasped 2 spells. One of them was an advanced skill similar to Frost Shock, which could reduce the speed of an enemy and deal a small amount of damage. The other was his basic skill, Moisturizing Rain. As the name suggested, this was a healer skill that healed and healed. In the beginning, Lin Jingwei rejected it. After all, his dream was to become a military advisor who could command the army and command the country with vigor. When he found out that he was actually a legendary water magician, he was a little disappointed, but it was not unacceptable. In fantasy novels, there were often powerful forbidden spells and water magic, such as 1,000 Miles of Ice or Water Dragon's Roar. But he never thought that he would become a shameful battlefield healer. Bear 2's ability was the legendary Beast transformation. When it used its ultimate move, the muscles on its entire body would swell, and it would become extremely powerful. It would be invulnerable to swords and spears, and it would also have a ferocious appearance. According to Xiong Er's ability, if he could reach S rank, he would have the chance to transform into a real Hellscream Grom. With a Bloodhowl battle axe, he would be able to cut down anyone he saw. As for Bai Fan, there was no need to mention him. This guy had actually awakened a talent for writing. He was really a vicious witch doctor on the battlefield, a walking source of negative buffs and viruses. Anyone who saw him would be annoyed. Elegance's ability was quite in line with her personality. The legendary Wounded Sword Demon was outstanding because she could fight and carry. She only had one sword at the start, and her equipment depended on fighting. The more heavily injured she was, the stronger her attack and defense would be. If she could be stuck in a near-death state, the E-rank Elegance could even fight a C-rank Protoss player. Of course, if she was really a Lone Ranger, once she was in a near-death state, she would basically die. But she had a team, and there was a healer in the team, Lin Jingwei. The two of them were a perfect match. When their team of 5 fought against thousands of E-rank Phantom Beasts, they relied on Elegance to hold the fort in front. Xiong transformed into an orc warrior to help from the side. Bai Fan frantically wrote and poisoned books in the back, and Lin Jingwei leaned against the wall and madly used rain to nourish Elegance. Cough, cough. The most important task of killing was handed over to Sun Xiaoxuan. She first turned everything she could throw into bombs and let Elegance and Xiong throw the dead or half-dead Phantom Beasts over. She wiped her hand on them, and after throwing them out, there were still bombs. After listening to the 5 of them talk about their experiences in the game, Qin Guang did not know what to say. He was speechless for a long time. Why did it feel like their lives were more thrilling and exciting than his? In addition, the speed of their growth was a little too fast. They actually adapted to the game so quickly and formed a super strong team with clear tactical thinking, clear division of labor, and seamless cooperation. Everyone's ability was brought into play. Even if they encountered a lone C-rank Protoss, there was no need to be afraid. Ordinary people really did not have this ability. I say, you guys suddenly got involved in this kind of thing. Why don't you know fear? Qin Guang could not help but ask. Sun Xiaoxuan leaned beside him and looked at him strangely. Why should we be afraid? It's not like we're the only players. There are so many players in the world. Lin Jingwei also said, Brother Guang, you haven't paid attention to a piece of news before, right? Qin Guang asked, what news? What happened in Area 51 is actually true. Area 51? The place where the aliens are locked up in America? Qin Guang thought for a while to make sure he did not hear wrong. In the old world, of course, he knew the legend of Area 51, but he was not sure if it existed in the New World. He did not know much about the New World before. Besides, wasn't China the strongest country in the New World? If there was a country in the world that could obtain and keep it, and even decipher the secrets of alien technology, wouldn't China be the most reliable? Lin Jingwei nodded. Yes, but the Area 51 that the people know is actually a cover. The specific location of the real alien technology base in the United States is even more secretive. A few years ago, we couldn't even confirm if it existed. It was only when one of our high-level spies was exposed last year that we received a definite answer at the last moment. Many people in China find it strange. With our nation's diligence and creativity, we only needed 30 to 40 years to lead the world in ancient times. But now that the new China has been established for nearly 90 years, we still haven't been able to leave Europe and America in the dust. This is very abnormal. Qin Guang raised his eyebrows. Although he felt that what Lin Jingwei said made sense, as someone who knew the evolution of the old world, he had the urge to beat someone up. You make it sound so easy, you nationalistic egomaniac. But what does this have to do with the game? Actually, this is all my personal speculation. I think this matter is the same as the Tesla accident more than 100 years ago. It's really an accident when Area 51 was developing alien technology. Actually, with your authority, Brother Guang, you can also access the information. It's just that you might be too busy to read it. Before the game came, according to our monitoring, there was a violent earthquake in the central plains of the United States. The intensity exceeded 7.5. Almost at the same time, our country's researchers discovered the God particle, and then the game came. And then Chen Guang smacked his lips. He felt that little Lin's act of thinking that he had seen through everything, but in fact, it was all nonsense. It was very amusing. Lin Jingwei continued. So we have reason to believe that this should be the manifestation of another energy form in the universe. The appearance of players among humans should mean that we are forced to begin the next step of evolution, from material life form to a spiritual life form. I also speculate that the reminder to reset when you die in the game should be erasing your memories as a player, but it's not a true death. Chen Guang immediately looked at him in a different light. Although this young man was making wild guesses, he actually managed to come up with the correct point of view in the end. He nodded. That's right. Lin Jingwei was overjoyed. Brother Guang, you think so too? You're an S-level player, so you should have more information than me, right? Chen Guang shook his head first, then nodded. It's not that I think so, but it's the truth. Resetting does not mean true death, but I'm not sure if a player can enter the game again after their identity is taken away. I still have to think about this. That's right. Then why should we be afraid? You're looking down on us too much. Gaoya, who was beside them, still had a bad temper and spoke rudely. Ahem, Gaoya, don't be like this. Chen Guang doesn't mean any harm. Sun Xiaoxuan tried to persuade her. Gaoya rolled her eyes and didn't say anything else. In her mind, she was cursing Sun Xiaoxuan for not giving up on Chen Guang. They then asked Chen Guang about his experience in the game. After all, he was the legendary S-level player. If they could know his growth, it would be very helpful. But the truth was that Chen Guang didn't have any experience. Even with the slaughtering world, he didn't get any substantial improvement. However, the background setting of the new world had set a tone for him. He had a closed-door training that didn't exist. Left with no choice, Chen Guang could only lie. When I fell off the cliff, I thought I was going to die. I didn't expect to see a crystal skeleton at the bottom of the cliff. Crystal skeleton. That's right. The energy in a powerhouse's body is too pure, so their bones crystallize. After they die, they become crystal skeletons. Then, I benefited from the inheritance left by this powerhouse and leveled up from C level to B level. Then, I entered an endless sea, and I was sucked into a whirlpool in the depths of the sea. Therefore, you wouldn't know if you didn't try. Chen Guang's bragging had fooled the 5 of them. Only then did he realize how good he was at bragging. They really believed him. The 6 of them chatted in school for the whole day. They looked forward to the future and summarized their experiences. However, Chen Guang didn't consider forming a team with them. The situation was complicated. Chen Guang didn't have any reward points. With their inventory, they could only exchange for 3 team contracts at most. If Chen Guang formed a team with 2 of them, the other 3's original team system would be broken. The next time they entered the game space, they would be alone. In that case, they might as well not form a team at all. In the afternoon, Chen Guang left Gokyo University and went straight to the city. Along the way, his mind was a mess. It was really strange. Most of the people who were close to him had mysteriously become players, and they even mysteriously had a party bug. Compared to other players, this was simply breaking the balance. But what was even stranger was that none of his family members who were close to him had any reaction. What was the cause of this? When he saw Wu Tong, the thought in his mind became even stranger. That's right. Sister Wu Tong and Sister Tang Ying had become a team. Chen Guang looked down at his hands. Am I the legendary source of the influenza virus? Isn't my influence too strong? Everyone close to me has entered the game? That's right. The player rate of Tianguang Group is also ridiculously high. Maybe this is the reason. Chapter 12:37. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. This new discovery made him uneasy, and in Wu Tong's eyes, he seemed a little distracted. At this time, the two of them were in Wu Tong's office. Wu Tong had been in the position of director for some time now. The longer she was away from frontline posts, the stronger her official aura became. Whether she was willing or not, this was a fact that could not be changed. Perhaps only when she was alone with Chen Guang could she find a little of the past. Wu Tong straightened her uniform, propped her chin with her hand, and lay her whole body on the desk. She did not rush Chen Guang, but just looked at him happily in a daze. Chen Guang's heart was completely lost, and he was completely immersed in his own world. First of all, although everyone was considered a genius, their performance in the game was a little too strong. Compared to the difficult start of the ordinary players, their start was simply too smooth. They had a team effect, and their initial ability values were relatively high. Not only did they exist in the form of a team, but the distribution of their awakened abilities was also quite scientific and reasonable. This definitely had something to do with his influence. There was only one explanation. In the old world, these people were too closely connected to him, and their fate formed a mysterious connection with him. When the worlds merged and the new world descended, the strong connection between them and himself allowed them to form a complete team with each other. They were more likely to become players, and because of the strong connection between them in real life, they would form a team effect. This was obviously very unfair to other players, but when he thought about it again, compared to the Protoss players who formed teams and organizations from the beginning, this seemed quite reasonable. After all, there was no harm if there was no comparison. The Protoss players were even more abnormal. Here was the problem. Once Chen Guang realized that he was the legendary source of infection, he had two choices in front of him. He could either find ways to continue spreading his influence, so that more ordinary people would be influenced by him and become players, and further strengthen the human players in the game, or he could try his best to restrain his influence in the future to prevent more ordinary people from being involved in this matter, which he did not know whether it was good or bad. Both choices had their own reasons, and Chen Guang didn't know what to do. If he wanted to strengthen the strength of the humans in the game, he should spread his influence and influence more powerful players. However, those who could truly survive in the game and grow rapidly were the cream of the crop. Allowing more ordinary people to enter the game might not necessarily be a good thing for them. If they were to be sent to their deaths at the beginning, it might even be disadvantageous. What should he do then? In addition, Chen Guang was also considering whether to let the five-man team from Tianguang Group and Gokyo University merge into the Ministry of Heaven, but now he changed his mind. If they were to rashly pull these people into the Heaven Division's team, it might destroy their originally stable team system. After thinking about it, he decided to take a risk and temporarily let everyone stay outside of Heaven Division, allowing them to develop freely. Of course, he could also use his authority to give them some extra convenience. He could give them a random name and open up the Heaven Division's intelligence and reinforcement system to them. This way, everyone would be able to enjoy the Tian Division's resources without any obvious changes to their identities. However, Chen Guang still had to convince the masses. So if they were to enjoy the Tian Division's resources, they would naturally have to make appropriate contributions. For example, if there was a member of Heaven Division who needed help in the game, they would have to lend a helping hand if the conditions allowed. Other than that, if they met a relatively weaker member of Heaven Division in the game, they should also consider adding them into the temporary team to help them grow. However, they might not be willing. In the game, everyone had their own judgment, and Chen Guang couldn't even be sure if his decision was really suitable for them. Perhaps they would think that developing alone was more beneficial. If Chen Guang had really grown from C to S rank, then he might have 100% confidence in his judgment. But now, even he wasn't sure if he was right or wrong. Would it really be better to let them develop freely? Look at your melancholy face. Those who don't know would think that you owe someone tens of billions of dollars. Wu Tong, who was beside him, finally spoke. She patted him on the shoulder. "What are you worried about?" Shen Guang sighed and turned to look at her. He asked, "Sister Wu Tong, you said that you and Sister Tang bumped into each other in the game. What exactly happened?" Wu Tong chuckled. "Come to think of it, it was strange. At that time, both my and Shadow Lady's appearances changed completely, but our figures didn't change much. We were big when we should be big, and small when we should be small." As Wu Tong spoke, she deliberately puffed out her chest. Shen Guang coughed lightly. "Ahem, let's get down to business." All right. Actually, the two of us didn't recognize each other at first, but we didn't know each other. Not long after we escaped together, I felt that the other party's gaze and tone of voice were quite right. So, when we were alone, I revealed my identity first. As soon as I opened my mouth, she immediately admitted it. Shen Guang couldn't help but admire Wu Tong's decisiveness. However, it was also in line with her personality. She was always so unreasonable. To put it bluntly, she was lacking a brain. I thought that you would become more sophisticated after being in the government for a long time, but you're still so straightforward. Are you complimenting me or scolding me? It's true that I have to be more mature in life, but in that game, no one knows that I'm Chief Wu. Why do I have to hide it and wear a mask all the time? Won't I die of exhaustion? You see, many people on the internet are full of tricks when it comes to scolding others. Don't you think he's the same in real life? Just a while ago, the netizen who insulted the police was personally arrested by my subordinates. Who would have thought that the brat would shout louder than anyone on the internet all day long? In the end, he turned out to be a frustrated white-collar worker. Everyone in his company said that he was honest. You can't judge a book by its cover. Shen Guang didn't expect Wu Tong to divert the topic. When it came to her anecdotes about her work, he pulled the topic back. "By the way, what's your and Sister Tang Ying's ability? Speaking of which, it's strange. My and Sister Tang Ying's ability." Wu Tong seemed to want to say something, but stopped. Shen Guang was at a loss. "What's wrong? Is it inconvenient for you to tell me?" Wu Tong's face suddenly turned red, as if she had made up her mind. "Forget it. I can't hide it from you. But you have to promise me that you won't tell anyone else." "What are you talking about? It's like it's some big deal." When Wu Tong finished speaking, Shen Guang's mouth was wide open for a long time. Wu Tong and Tang Ying's awakened abilities left him speechless. Before the two of us met each other, it was really frustrating. I couldn't fight at all. I even had a D rank rating, but I couldn't use it at all. The description of my ability was also vague. I wanted to try triggering the player's innate ability like others, but nothing happened. There was even one time when I was chased by an E-rank player and almost died in his hands. Shen Guang was surprised. "No way. Do human players kill each other?" Wu Tong curled her lips and looked at Shen Guang in surprise. "Looks like I have to get to know you again. Why didn't I realize that you were so stupid and naive? Weren't you a bad kid? Why did you think that human players would really be a loving family?" Shen Guang chuckled. "I thought that with a common enemy like the Protoss, humans would be able to put down their grudges and work together. You think too much. There are so many players, and no one wants to be the one who gets eliminated. Even if it's just 1 point, they have to fight for it. Not to mention that everyone has a different identity in the game. As long as they can vent their negative emotions, who can be detached from the world? There's a little demon living in everyone's heart. I know that, but I didn't expect. Forget it. Let's get back to you and Sister Tang Ying's ability." Shen Guang smiled bitterly and shook his head. It wasn't that he was naive, but he vaguely knew the truth of this game. In addition to self-defense, the most important task for players in the game was not to complete the quest, defeat the Phantom Beasts, and pass the test. The real theme should be to suppress the Protoss in the quest. Now, that the Protoss were much stronger than humans, if humans did not work together, they would not be able to make a comeback. However, the current situation was that Shen Guang understood this logic, but others did not know that they were facing a game. Therefore, other than the Heavens, who had a strong sense of social responsibility, there should be quite a number of people who treated this matter as a game. At that time, I hated that guy to the core, but there was nothing I could do. He had a high level, but no combat power. Later, after I escaped and returned to the main group, I talked to the Shadow Girl and found out that she had the same problem. Then, when the two of us faced each other, I realized that our abilities had to be combined to be effective. Huh? There's such a setting? Yin and yang balance? Screw you. Both of them are yin. There's no yang. Wu Tong pushed Qingguang, but then changed the topic. But then again, it seems that your understanding is correct. Have you heard of humanoid weapons? I've seen them in cartoons before, ship girl. You can think of it that way. Anyway, my ability is called Activator, and your sister Tang Ying's is called Mutant. What is a mutant? After the activator activates their superpowers, their entire body will recombine and mutate into a weapon. Weapon? Right now, it's a broadsword about 3 feet long. If we rank it according to the player's ability, it's probably a weapon with destructive power between D and C grade. What about you? My mission is to use this broadsword that the Shadow Girl has transformed into to slay demons. There's such a thing? Then this is called fusion. It's not wrong to call it fusion. Anyway, when I wield the Crimson Shadow Sword, I'm very strong. We once fought with a C-grade Protoss player, and I beat him until he ran away. Qingguang asked again, "Oh right, how do you activate your ability to turn a person into a sword?" Wu Tong smiled mysteriously, stretched out her right hand, and pointed her middle finger upward. Qingguang did not understand. What kind of move is this? Do you really need me to explain it so clearly? I used my finger to make your sister Tang Ying do something, and then she lost consciousness and mutated. Qingguang's mouth was wide open, and he was speechless for a long time. He was really shocked. Wu Tong blushed at his stare. We've thought about it before, but we've always been shy and didn't dare try it. We don't have any other choice. We can't always be useless in the game. That's the theory, but this setting is too... Why, you don't like it? Are you unhappy? Is it because of her or me? Qingguang waved his hands. No. So you don't care about me? Sister Wu Tong, look at the situation now. You're a bureau chief after all, so you should have some sense of propriety. Both of you are only D grade, but you can already fight against a C grade Protoss. This is the pinnacle of combat power among human players. Although it's a little wild, for the sake of strength, it's understandable. Yep, that's it. I feel like you're laughing. Are you planning something bad in your head? Absolutely not. Is that so? That's a pity. Actually, I've discussed it with the Shadow Lady. If there's a chance, I'll let you try in a game to see if you can stimulate her. For the future of mankind, to defeat the evil Protoss, even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance of strengthening mankind, I'll do it. You're still saying you don't have any bad ideas? Actually, it's not impossible. Men are all like this. You can hide this from others, but you can't hide it from me, who deals with criminals all year round. Sooner or later, I'll bring you to justice. Wu Tong patted Qingguang's shoulder. All right, what were you worried about just now? Qingguang casually said his guess. You're saying that 2 groups of people have formed a party because of you without signing the party contract? Yeah. What's wrong? What's wrong? I was wondering why I appeared in the same game as the Shadow Lady. Moreover, our birthplaces are very close to each other. I thought it was a coincidence, but now it seems like it was inevitable. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have exchanged for those 2 party contracts. They're so expensive. Then what do you think I should do? Should I let you join the Heaven Division? Should I continue to think of ways to infect more players? It's hard for me to explain to you the specifics, but this game has indeed been greatly influenced by me. I'll help you think about the first problem. It's very simple. Just give the suggestion and let them decide for themselves. Just like me, I'm not interested in joining the Heaven Division. Qingguang was puzzled. Why is that? I've been in the system for so long. It wasn't easy for me to regain a free identity. I don't have to think about work all the time. In the end, I had to switch from the police system to the special forces system. Isn't that torture for me? But isn't your dream? Life in the game should be different from life in real life, right? It's not that I'm tired of my job. Arresting criminals is addictive. I'll never tire of it. Do you know? In the past 6 months, the crime rate in my district has decreased by 1%. Qingguang felt that Wu Tong's thoughts were contradictory, but he didn't know how to convince her. On second thought, it didn't seem necessary. Since she took the initiative to say it, she must have made up her mind. She should have known about the existence of the Heaven Division, but she chose to act independently. Didn't that mean she didn't want to join the Heaven Division? All right. By the way, why can't I get through to Sister Tanging? She just came back and is busy. Didn't you give her a large sum of money? She's busy with her research institute. I thought she's no longer interested. How is that possible? God knows how interested she is now. Other than researching her genes, she found herself a new business. What business? She wants to decipher the connection between the game and the human psyche. She even thinks that the player's genes have been changed. Chen Guang was silent. In a sense, Tang Ying's guess wasn't wrong. However, it wasn't just the players that were changed. It was the entire universe. The level of change wasn't as simple as genes, but the fundamental particles and the rules of the universe. Chapter 1238. All right, I'll go look for her later. Save it. She said that she's only focused on getting the Research Institute up and running as soon as possible. She doesn't care about the outside world and only cares about the lab. Instead of looking for her, why don't you give her more money and invest in her research? You're not short of money anyway. Oh, by the way, she knew that you'd come to me to ask her. So she told me to send a sample to me when you're free, but you don't have to go. As she spoke, Wu Tong forwarded a message to Chun Guang that contained Tang Ying's message to him. Brat, the sample is running out. Hurry up. Tang Ying, am busy sending money. Chun Guang stared at the phone in a daze. Did Tang Ying's personality change after the world fusion? Also, what's with the sample? Does it mean that I have to make it myself and send it to her in a bottle? Will the delivery company accept it? If I were the delivery company, I'd probably call the police to arrest the pervert. By the way, if you really want to do something with her, why don't you come to our mission space when there's a mission in the game? S-class players can choose their own mission space, right? Chen Guang shook his head. I'm not sure. Then we'll talk about it later. There's no point in being impatient. All right, you can leave now if there's nothing else. Huh? You're sending me off already? Of course not. I've been here for too long. There's a regional conference waiting for me. Recently, some players seem to be lost in the power they've suddenly gained. They don't seem to be very peaceful outside. The security management is quite stressful. After that, Wu Tong really turned around and left. But after taking 2 steps, she turned around and looked at Chun Guang in annoyance. Let me add something else. Tang Ying has already confessed to me about what you and Sister Tang Ying did on the plane. Chen Guang was stunned. His body stiffened as he did not know how to deal with the situation. He had the awkwardness of being a cat that was caught stealing fish. Fortunately, Wu Tong immediately said, Come on, we are not ordinary people now. There are some things that we don't need to care so much. Relax. I've also heard some news that you accidentally encountered some dual cultivation technique when you were practicing martial arts. I understand. It's just that I'm a little unwilling to let you have it for free. After that, Wu Tongzhen left, leaving Chun Guang at a loss in the office. Was she angry or not? Also, I was asked to leave so early today. Is it because Sister Wu Tong is angry? Or was she really busy? He didn't understand the problem until he arrived at the Dawn Photocatalyst Research Institute, which had just been completed. However, he didn't have the right to dwell on the same thing. As the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. Although he didn't feel the overwhelming pressure, he had already shouldered a very heavy burden. Now, he was also afraid of the next game mission. It seemed that the advanced team led by Yu Ting had completed their mission perfectly, allowing the gods of the endless realm of the gods to be projected into the game on a large scale. The endless realm of the gods would never spend so much effort on useless things. The gods didn't just passively descend because of the fusion of the worlds. According to Yu Ting's previous performance, they came with a mission. Although he didn't know what their mission was, he certainly couldn't let them succeed. As early as when Chun Guang won the lawsuit with the 5 god-level formulas in Princeton, the Dawn Laboratory project was officially launched. The site selection, the purchase of the company's old factory, and the initial purchase of equipment and instruments were carried out almost simultaneously with the transformation of Zhui Jingxi's results in Princeton's laboratory. Now, more than 90% of the civil construction of the Dawn Laboratory had been completed. Only some simple decoration work was left. As for the equipment, it couldn't be bought in a short time. First, it was expensive. Although Chang Guang's previous investment seemed to be expensive, it was still a long way from building a mature, top-notch photocatalyst laboratory. Second, a lot of the equipment had to be customized. It would take some time from the order to the production. Now that the global box office dividends of Women were gradually coming in, the $360 million reward from the dark web was also gradually being exchanged. After a while, Chun Guang would easily be able to spend hundreds of millions of USD in one go. At that time, Dawn Laboratory would become the world's top photocatalyst research institution, both hard and soft power. Of course, the most important thing now was to use the 5 kinds of photocatalysts that Zhuo Jingxi had mass-produced in Princeton's laboratory as soon as possible in the Tangshan industrial factory. First, it would solve the remaining problems of the Tangshan industrial factory once and for all. Second, it would officially announce the birth of Dawn Environmental Protection Group. Third, it would use industrial application to prove to the world that their photocatalyst formula was not just on paper, but it really had practical value. No matter how perfect the formulas on paper were, or how perfect the theoretical conditions were, there was an irrefutable truth in the global scientific research industry. True knowledge could only be tested by practice. Before meeting Zhuo Jingxi, Chun Guang was already mentally prepared that Zhuo Jingxi might have become a player. Sure enough, as soon as he arrived at the laboratory, Hualing quickly closed the door, then turned around and looked at Chun Guang mysteriously. I finally see an S-level god in the flesh. He's just a little more handsome than the average person. Chun Guang was a little confused by her stare, then turned his head to look in the direction of Zhong Yu and Zhuo Jingxi. Don't tell me the 3 of you have also become players? Hua Ling shrugged. What do you think? Otherwise, why would I say that in front of them? Having been shocked 3 times before, Chun Guang was now numb to it. Anyway, people who were quite close to him and often interacted with him were most likely people. Hey, if I'm not wrong, the 3 of you also have your own team in the game, right? Zhuo Jingxi, who was next to him, put down the test tube in her hand and looked at Chun Guang in surprise. How did you know? Sure enough, Chun Guang chuckled. If I said it was because of me, would you believe me? Zhuo Jingxi pondered for 2 seconds and said, Oh, I get it. Is it because your level is too high that people like us, who are often with you, are infected by your power? Then not only do we become players, but we can also naturally team up in the game? You can understand it that way. Anyway, that's the case. After chatting with the 3 of them for a while, Chun Guang gained a better understanding of their abilities before shifting his attention back to the photocatalyst. The game was scary, but life had to go on. In addition, the abilities of the 3 of them were also very strange. They had been through 4 mission spaces so far, but they had not encountered the slightest bit of danger. Every time they entered the game space, as long as the 3 of them exposed their abilities, not to mention other human players, even the Protoss would protect them. In reality, their work was scientific research, especially Zhuo Jingxi, who was proficient in environmental science, material science, chemistry, and physics. In the game, her ability was further strengthened. She could actually help others repair damaged equipment and items, and, at the same time, she could modify equipment and make low-level items more powerful. As for Hua Ling, she was more hands-on. Every time she modified or repaired equipment, it was often Zhuo Jingxi who used her ability to come up with a set of plans, and then Hua Ling could complete it at a very fast speed. Of course, this process required the consumption of materials, and these materials had to be exchanged by others with reward points. Zhong Yu's main ability was to pre-process these materials. Moreover, she was good at environmental protection. She also had a special ability. For example, when she encountered a powerful fire-type magical beast, this kind of magical beast would often set up a scorching sea of fire or magma around it to facilitate its own combat. It could weaken the strength of the players and also allow itself to be like a fish in water. Zhong Yu could use her awakened talent to eliminate the impact of the phantom beast on the environment as much as possible. The team formed by the three of them did not pose any threat or lethality to others, but it was quite useful. It was simply a super logistics team that everyone loved. Chen Guang thought of the combat uniform he had seen when he experienced the slaughtering world, the various magical equipment that the genius high school student had transformed into, and the apocalypse tank and sniper of the old man's team. He thought to himself that if Zhuo Jingxi's team had been among the crowd at that time, the ordinary players would not have been so weak. Chapter 1239. He stayed in the laboratory for about an afternoon and saw with his own eyes the 5 photocatalysts he had invented himself. These 5 finished products were now stored in dozens of safes in the underground warehouse of the Research Institute. There were also extremely high-level security guards patrolling outside to prevent them from being stolen. On the other side, the metal carriers for the 5 finished catalysts were also being produced in full swing. The 5 pre-treatment pools of Tongshan Factory had long been built, and they were just waiting for the carriers coated with the new catalyst to be thrown into the pools. As for Zhuo Jingxi and the others, their current work included continuing to supervise the production of the customized equipment, perfecting and accepting the technical improvements of Tongshan Factory, and perfecting and verifying the actual treatment effect of the new photocatalyst formula on the 5 kinds of ultra-difficult wastewater in the laboratory. Although everyone already knew the results, the popularization of every new process and new product often had to go through several processes: theoretical perfection, small-scale research, pilot verification, and industrial application verification. This wasn't superfluous, but a very rigorous scientific process. Chen Guang didn't understand this before, and he didn't care about it. These were all formulas he had used as a cheat. Although he was 100% sure of the effect, others might not think so. First, he would do a verification in the laboratory. This was the first time he had done it for others to see, and then he would do it again on the spot. There was no doubt about the conclusion. When he left, he wanted to ask Teacher Zhuo out for a heart-to-heart talk in the evening, but she gave up on the idea on the spot. She said that she wouldn't leave until there were results in the laboratory. Now that the newly established Dawn Research Institute had recruited a lot of new employees, she didn't trust them. The Dawn Research Institute had hired quite professional security guards, and many of them had been borrowed from the military through their connections with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. At the very least, they were all professional Special Forces soldiers. In fact, these Special Forces soldiers also faced a situation where they could choose not to transfer. Their years of service had long exceeded the normal length of military service. According to the law, they could already choose to receive a large sum of money to return to ordinary life. However, these elites usually chose to continue serving because of the needs of the country and their personal patriotism. With their individual combat ability, it was easy for them to be promoted to the rank of sergeant, but there were all kinds of difficulties if they wanted to go further. They really weren't willing to be responsible for security for a private company. They couldn't afford to lose face. This time, the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the higher-ups of the military had both made an appearance. It was said that they were responsible for the security of Chen Guang's core industries. At the same time, although they had changed positions, they were still paid. They really managed to pull in a lot of experts from the military. With the capabilities of these people, Chen Guang felt that this side was quite reliable and there was no need to worry at all. Unfortunately, Zhuo Jingxi did not think so, so he could only run away with his tail between his legs. After busying himself outside for 2 whole days, it was rare for him to return to his house in the district outside Wujing University. Although he had become a millionaire, as the saying goes, no gold or silver nest can compare to your own kennel. It didn't matter if the house wasn't big, as long as it was comfortable. That was why he was so angry when his parents blew up the villa that Lil Lai's parents had painstakingly built. His anger reached its peak when he returned and saw that the room that was meant for him was gone. Now that he was alone in a room, he felt a little lonely. He thought that he might as well go back to school to stay. Otherwise, it would be too miserable to stay here alone. There wasn't even someone to brag to. In any case, school was about to start soon. In any case, he could wash his hands of all the company's matters. In any case, there was no difference whether he cared about the players' matters or not. When the next cup realm came, he could pull himself into the game. Wouldn't everything be clear then? S-rank player? As he crossed his legs and fiddled with the computer in front of him, Chen Guang pondered over this explanation. Although others often use this to describe him, he actually didn't know how the so-called S-rank was classified. No one would believe him if he said it. As his mind wandered, he casually fiddled with the mouse on the computer, looking around. He was still far from knowing the information related to the entire world's environment. Things that seemed like common sense in the eyes of others were the accumulated knowledge of many people over a decade or two. It might seem simple, but it was definitely not something that could be done in 3 days to memorize everything and not conflict with the old world's common sense system in his mind when communicating with others. For example, China's current GDP was nearly twice that of the United States. This completely conflicted with the impression in Chen Guang's mind. It was so conflicting that he almost couldn't change it. Therefore, when Chen Guang chatted with others, he was actually very careful, afraid that he would slip up and make things awkward. After browsing the news for a while, he felt a little annoyed. Watching the news with a purpose was completely different from taking out his phone to browse when he had nothing to do. He clicked on entertainment news to change his train of thought and rest his brain. He happened to see Jin Shuriyue and Jiang Yage's names on the headlines. Women swept the global box office. Of course, Chen Guang wasn't the only one who became popular. The other main leads in the film, Rin Chong, Zhou Ye, Zhao Yueling, and the others, had their salaries and net worth soar. In just 3 to 4 months, they had at least received several high-paying contracts. As for Jin Shuriyue and Jiang Yage, who were already extremely popular, there was no need to mention them. No matter how powerful Chinese entertainment was in the New World, the natural barrier between Chinese and English in the entertainment culture was inevitable. Although Hollywood in the New World wasn't as powerful as in the Old World, it at least occupied half of the world's market with Chinese films. Furthermore, most of the time, the two sides didn't overlap. After this battle, the left and right-hand duo could be considered to have completely broken through the barrier between the two major language families and made a name for themselves in the English-speaking area. Although the two of them performed rather mediocre in scenes without Chen Guang, as long as Chen Guang appeared or filmed scenes with others on set, it would definitely be worth the price of the ticket. As for the news that Chen Guang saw now, it was that the two of them planned to follow up on their victory and release an all-English album. Although the two of them had been child stars since they were young and could only be said to be at the level of an ordinary person in cultural classes, they benefited from the fact that they had gone abroad early to further their studies at the Tchaikovsky Academy of Music and other prestigious academies, so their spoken English was pretty good. In the past half a year, because of Chen Guang's participation in the world language competition, Jiang Yage and Jin Shuriyue, who had evil intentions, took the initiative to cram in their spoken English. Now is the time to record an all-English album so that people wouldn't feel like they were salt and pepper when they sang it. Looking at Jiang Yage's beautiful photos in the news, Chen Guang's mind couldn't help but think of some inappropriate scenes. He turned on his phone, but it was a pity that he didn't know when his previous inventory had been emptied. It was quite a pity. Chen Guang decided to find a sufficient reason for himself. That's right. In order to provide samples for the Great Life Sciences Research Institute, I can't be so selfish. I should take the initiative to sacrifice and contribute. Also, seeing that the two of them are still in the mood to think about the new album, it seems that they aren't sure if the two of them have become players. Now that I've come out of seclusion, it's reasonable for me to take the initiative to care about them. Therefore, he picked up his phone and decisively called Jiang Yage. Chapter 1240. In fact, it was already quite late at night, and it was quite impolite to call others. However, Chen Guang was a little bit brainless, and the other party was Jiang Yage, so he had less scruples. He didn't expect Jiang Yage to hang up on him first. While Chen Guang was confused, Jiang Yage directly opened his WeChat video call. After the video connection, what appeared in front of Chen Guang's eyes was a magnificently decorated hall. He didn't know which luxurious hotel room Jiang Yage was in at the moment. Celebrities were often like this. They couldn't go back to their homes all year round, and most of their lives were spent in hotels or flying around on planes. Although Jin Jiang and Qin Haodong were now superstars with extraordinary backgrounds, to be celebrities, these things had to be done eventually. Otherwise, the audience and fans would often forget them in the fastest speed. After waiting for a few seconds, Jiang Yage appeared in the camera. At this time, she was sitting in front of a piano in pajamas. Her fingers danced nimbly on the keys, and the beautiful notes fluttered through the video signal, adding to her charm at this time. "You're finally willing to call me. I thought you'd forgotten about us." Jiang Yage stopped, turned sideways, and turned to look at the camera. She said very mischievously, being looked at by her rather pure gaze. Chen Guang suddenly felt a little ashamed in his heart. He was completely embarrassed to expose his previous crooked thoughts, so he coughed lightly and said, "It's nothing special. I just saw that you're about to release a new album, so I called to show my concern." Jiang Yage chuckled and looked as if she had already seen through him. "Hee, I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? How could I not know you?" In fact, she was very happy at this moment. She had known this guy for so long, and she had always been the one to take the initiative. This guy had always been stubborn. Sometimes, even if his mind was full of distracting thoughts, he would still hide them in front of her. He was quite wretched and shameless. Today, he took the initiative to call her in the middle of the night. How could he not be dirty? "All right, have you seen my new variety show?" Chen Guang didn't know what was on Jiang Yage's mind at this time. He changed the topic to Haishan with only one purpose, to test her. Jiang Yage rolled her eyes, feeling a little disappointed. However, she immediately collected her thoughts and put on a serious expression. "You want to ask me if I'm a player, right? Well, I already know the answer." As soon as she opened her mouth, Chen Guang knew whether or not it was true. The two of them chatted for a while, and, as expected, what was the saying again? When the nest is overturned, no eggs can remain intact. Their relationship with Chen Guang was extremely deep, and they were also deeply implicated by this fellow. Coupled with the fact that Jin Jiang and Jin Jin were extremely talented, it was simply inevitable that they would be dragged into this mess. These two people's abilities were also quite impressive. They were called soul singers, which sounded like a curse, but actually had a deeper meaning. The effect of the so-called soul singers was similar to that of the war song shaman. In the game, they could use their voices to buff their enemies or buff their teammates. This seemed a little similar to playing the piano, but in fact, it was not. The talent level of the soul singers was obviously a level higher than that of the pianist. At the same level, the weakening and buff effects of the soul singers were much stronger than that of the pianist. More importantly, they didn't need any equipment. They only needed to use their voices, and they could sing whenever they felt that something was wrong. They could sing to the point where one Buddha was born and two Buddhas ascended to heaven at any time. However, Jin Shuriwei and Jiang Yage were very dissatisfied with this. In their hearts, music was something that could bring joy to people. How could they sing to the point where others would run away like rats? Moreover, their singing was not bad, so wouldn't it be embarrassing? Fortunately, apart from an initial talent of being a soul singer, the two of them each had a second talent. Unlike Jiang Yage, who only focused on strengthening her piano skills after meeting Chen Guang, Jin Shuriwei had been a genius when it came to musical instruments since a young age. In addition, she was diligent and inquisitive. Whenever she had the chance, she would practice hard. In fact, her piano skills were definitely at the level of a master. However, due to her status as a celebrity in her young age, she had never held any special concerts. The impression that others had of her was that of a celebrity with both acting and singing skills. She had never been regarded as a master pianist. It was only in the game that her talent was recognized by the system, which had seen through its essence. A soul singer with a single skill was already very powerful. Now that she could combine playing and singing, her power increased to a whole new level. Although she was only a D rank now, she could already be considered a C rank powerful support. As for Jiang Yage's second talent, it was even more strange. It was actually car racing. Chen Guang guessed that it might have something to do with her chasing him in a car on Fengquan Mountain. In short, the two of them really formed the strange combination that Chen Guang had once imagined, the legendary caravan Soul Sing Girls group. Others could not catch up to them, and they could not hit them. Jiang Yage drove the caravan that she had exchanged her reward points while shouting from the driver's seat. She was responsible for the super negative buff. Jean Shuriwei was responsible for playing the piano in the caravan, adding buffs to her own people. That was not all. Although the two of them had changed their appearances in the game, others did not know that they were a left-hand and right-hand duo. However, it still could not stop their celebrity temperament, and it even strengthened them to a considerable extent. Every time the two of them entered the mission space, they were able to quickly form teams, big or small. So far, in the 5 missions they had experienced, almost every time the teams formed by the two of them could become the mainstay of the humans in each independent space. Chen Guang even felt that the two of them might enjoy the fun of the game more than him. I'm convinced. That's good. Then I don't have to worry about you so much. Chen Guang laughed and then prepared to forcibly cut off the video. Hey, wait. What's the matter? In order to cover up his evil intentions, Chen Guang deliberately pinched a very stern expression. When can you come to Yanjing? In a few days, Sister Shuriwei and I will go to Europe. Since we're going to release an English album, we have to properly promote it. Now that you are our boss, shouldn't you come and support us? We will make money for you in the future, Jiang Yage said while blinking, which was very meaningful. Only then did Chen Guang realize that he had nearly forgotten that the two of them were artists under him. He thought about it and said, "Is that so? I think it's better for you to go out after a while. You can come to Wujing first." Are you serious? What's the matter? Jiang Yage tilted her head and looked at him. Chen Guang nodded. That's my plan. It seems that a lot of people have been involved because of me. I think I should call everyone together and communicate with each other. At this point, he didn't care about the accident or the charaba anymore. The whole world was different now. Everyone's fate had changed. If the accident happened, then so be it. As long as he could gather everyone together into a team, and with the support of Heaven's resources, Chen Guang felt that he might be able to build a team that could rival Yu Ting's team before the next game mission. No matter how strong he was still just one person. He couldn't take care of everything. There would always be things that he couldn't take care of. I will first make myself the strongest player, then build the strongest team. Only then can I truly boost my confidence. I have to let all the players know that not only am I strong, I can also make others strong. Just as he was thinking about this, his phone suddenly rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from Tang Ying. Where's the sample? Tang Ying was rushing the goods again. Can we not be arrogant? Can you come and get it yourself? Chen Guang replied decisively. Chapter 1241. In the end, he still found a high-end courier company to mail the small glass bottle the next morning. In order to prevent the smell from leaking, not only did he seal the bottle tightly, but he even wrapped it with at least 3 layers of adhesive tape. At first, the courier refused. After all, the other party's behavior was too sneaky, and he didn't even let him open the box to check. He said that it was a normal nutritional protein for a girl to use on a facial mask. But who are you kidding? Who would send a facial mask with such a tight package? Who would send a facial mask in such a small bottle? The courier had reason to believe that the thing that the other party was trying to mail might be poisonous, and he even wanted to call the police. Sir, do you think this is appropriate? You're dressed so sneakily, and you want to mail such a strange thing. I asked you what it was, but you didn't tell me. Shouldn't you at least let me see what's in the bottle? But you don't agree. I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want to express. I can't accept your order. I really can't accept it. Why don't you find someone else? The courier waved his hand, turned around, and wanted to leave. He even put his hand in his pocket, planning to call the police once he was far away. Chen Guang was placed in an awkward position. Actually, he could have asked someone from his company to help him, but he was afraid that if someone saw it, it would be embarrassing. Besides, even if someone didn't see it, it would be too disgusting to let someone he knew deliver this to him. He had thought that he would be rejected if he called the courier, but he didn't expect the man to look like he wanted to call the police. Left with no choice, he took off the sunglasses, hat, and mask on his face. "All right, you should know who I am now, right?" The courier was stunned for a few seconds before he suddenly reacted. "Oh my God, you are." He gulped before continuing. "All-rounder? Chen Guang?" "Chen Guang, the star of women." Chen Guang nodded. "Uh-huh. Can you help me deliver it now?" "Well, although I didn't expect to see you here, our company has a rule that you have to look at something." Chen Guang took out a stack of red notes from his pocket. "I understand your company's requirements, but I really have some inconveniences. How about this? Since it's a same-city express delivery, why don't you help me deliver it privately?" "That won't do. If the company finds out, I'll—" Chen Guang took out another stack. "There's about 3,000 or 4,000 here. As long as you don't tell anyone, who will know? Anyway, if someone asks, you could just say that you didn't accept my order, right?" The red notes that Chen Guang had taken out added up to nearly 6,000 yuan. The purchasing power of the new world's RMB was greater than that of the old world. 5,000 to 6,000 yuan was equivalent to 2 to 3 months of this young man's salary. In the end, the young man succumbed to the temptation of money and accepted the small bottle and the stack of red notes that Chen Guang had wrapped tightly. Chen Guang wasn't afraid that he wouldn't do anything after taking the money. He was famous, rich, and powerful. The young man knew that if he dared to cause trouble, Chen Guang had 10,000 ways to make him disappear. After sending off the young man, Chen Guang returned to his room and took out his phone. He began to think about how to call everyone to his place for the meeting. Before he could make the call, he received a call from an unknown number. Chen Guang answered the call with confusion. He heard a vaguely familiar voice. It was Wang Long, whom Chen Guang hadn't talked to in a long time. He was Wu Tong's deputy when she was the captain of the Wenxing Town branch. Now, after Wu Tong was promoted, Wang Long followed suit and became the captain of the Xinhua district branch. "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry to call you at this time." Chen Guang didn't think much of it. Instead, he had a bad feeling. Given his simple friendship with Wang Long would only contact him if he had something important to tell him. "What's the matter?" "Well, the bureau is in some trouble and may need your help, Mr. Chen," Wang Long said hesitantly. Where is it? Tell me, I'll be there right away." He didn't know what happened, but since Wang Long was asking for help, it might really be something serious. "It's at Xinhua Industrial Park, East Gate, number 32, Zone D. The director didn't want me to contact you, but I think the problem is serious, so I don't think it's a good idea." "Okay, I'll be there right away." Chen Guang went downstairs and drove to the Xinhua Industrial Park as fast as he could. He drove in a hurry, and while waiting for the traffic lights, he searched for information online. The place was a large industrial park outside the inner Third Ring Road in Wu Tong's district. There were many factories of large enterprises. Several of the top logistics companies in China and the world had built their large warehouse centers in the southwest region. Zone D was the warehouse center of one of them. It was a large automated warehouse with a total area of more than 500,000 square meters. At this time, in the warehouse of Zone D, there were 2 groups of people confronting each other. However, neither of them were from the police force. One of them was a young man wearing the uniform of the warehouse center staff. He should be an ordinary employee here. His face still had the youthful look of a student, and he looked like he had just started working. On the other side were 3 men in suits. The atmosphere was quite tense, and the conflict between the 2 groups seemed to be on the verge of breaking out. One of the middle-aged men in a suit crossed his hands and said coldly, "Your name is Fire in the Game, right?" The young man shook his head. "I don't know what you're talking about." The middle-aged man in the suit chuckled. "The system won't lie. Since we've already exposed your code name, Fire, and mentioned the game, and you still didn't have any adverse reactions, it's useless no matter how you act. We know you're a player. We're 100% sure, or else we wouldn't have found you. We don't want to be punished by the system." Seeing that he couldn't argue, the young man could only sigh helplessly. "What's your purpose in finding me?" As he spoke, he looked at the 3 people in front of him nervously. In his heart, he already knew that he was in trouble. The middle-aged man in the suit shrugged. "I know you gained a lot from the last mission. Hand over your reward points." "Oh, right. You still have a D-grade destruction bomb, right? That's a valuable treasure. Hand it over together, and we'll let you go. Impossible. Fire waved his hand angrily. Dream on. The middle-aged man didn't care. Do you think you have a choice now? You're just an E-grade player, but we have a D-grade player and 2 E-grade players who are close to D-grade. Also, I forgot to tell you, I was born in a traditional martial arts family. I could take on 10 ordinary people like you. The young man in the suit gritted his teeth. He knew that since the other party dared to find him, they must have 100% confidence. I know who you are. He recalled the 3-man team he had encountered in the last mission. In the game, these 3 people had been scheming and rather selfish. In order to fight for the slightest benefit, they would kill other human players. That was why these 3 people had improved very quickly in the game and were very strong. In the last mission, he had joined the same temporary team with these 3 people for a long time. They had only parted ways when the mission was about to end. However, he didn't expect that he would be caught in the real world. Among these 3 people, there must be a company executive who had observed him for a long time before confirming his identity and coming to find him in the real world. Since you know that I have a destruction bomb, aren't you afraid that I'll detonate it and die with you? Fire's heart was filled with unwillingness. He knew that even if he handed over the item, he might not survive. The middle-aged man in the suit was completely unmoved. Are you joking? As far as I know, the equipment and items in the game can't be used in the real world. Fire gritted his teeth. You only know about E-grade items. How do you know that D-grade items can't work? Do you dare to bet? I have nothing to lose. 1 person in exchange for 3 of your lives. It's worth it. The 3 people in the suit looked at each other with a dignified expression. Fire guessed correctly. Although there was a D-grade player among the 3, they had exchanged for 3 contracts in order to form a team. In addition, their luck in the game was quite average. They had never obtained any D-grade items, so they weren't sure. You're bluffing. As long as you hand over the reward points and the destruction bomb, we'll let you go. With your talent, there's hope. There's no need to do this. I'll say the same to you. We're all humans. Just work hard in the game. You don't have to die with me. You don't have that ability. You can't use the bomb. If you have the guts, come and try. Outside the warehouse center, Wu Tong and 5 other police officers, including Wang Long, were on standby. One of the police officers said, Chief Wu, I think if these people want to fight or kill, let them do as they please. Anyway, according to the information, these people aren't people who know their place. The 3 of them don't matter, but Fire's performance in the game is not bad. According to the Sky's standards, he's worth training. Wu Tong said while looking at the surveillance video in front of her. It was the image of the police hacking into the storage center. Just now, when Fire's code name was called, Wu Tong used the authority granted to her by Chun Guang to find the list of names in the Sky's information. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in and save them. Chief, you're so strong. Are you afraid of those 3 rookies? This time, Wu Tong brought police players that she had carefully selected. As for the information, part of it came from the Sky, while the other part came from the police's investigation. Since more than a month ago, the 3 people who had nothing to do with each other suddenly became close. This time, the 3 of them flew from different parts of the country to the 5 capitals and went straight to the storage center. One of them was indeed a high-ranking member of this large logistics company. Before they set out, this high-ranking member made a series of clever arrangements and transfers. At this time, only the man with the code name Fire was left in the storage center. With Wu Tong's sharp senses, she immediately guessed that something big was going to happen. In fact, a long time ago, she had been worried that the conflict between players might extend into the real world. Now, it had finally happened. This shouldn't have been within her scope of work. It should have been the Sky's responsibility. However, Wu Tong felt that such a situation would become the norm in the future. Although the Sky's personnel were sufficient, under the tone set by Chung Guang, most of their energy seemed to be focused on the game. This kind of conflict that happened in the real world seemed to be the responsibility of the police. As long as they carefully selected and explored carefully, they should be able to find enough people in the military and the police. However, there was an error in the information. Previously, The Sky's information said that the strongest of the three was only level E. They didn't expect the surveillance system to show that one of the men had already become level D. Although Wu Tong was also level D, without Tang Ying by her side, she couldn't display much of her combat power. In the real world, it was useless even if she called Tang Ying over. How could he transform? The police officers that she brought with her were all level E. They weren't strong enough. For a moment, it was hard to get off the tiger. The steady Wang Long understood Wu Tong quite well. Although he didn't know why the chief was a little hesitant, he could analyze from Wu Tong's behavior that the situation wasn't that simple. This was also the first time that the police dealt with a conflict between players in the real world. Wang Long secretly called Chen Guang behind Wu Tong's back. Chapter 1242. The atmosphere of the confrontation between the two sides grew increasingly tense, but Wu Tong was hesitant to give the order to attack. The other player police officers in the station thought that Wu Tong's combat power was comparable to that of a C-class. Moreover, she was also an elite among elites. The player police officers she had brought here today were also of a higher standard, so they couldn't understand why Wu Tong was hesitating. They didn't know how powerful the destructive bombs that the two sides mentioned were, and whether they could be used in real life. If they were to compare the destructive power in the game, the explosion of a D-class consumable bomb could turn the entire Xinhua Industrial Park No. 32 upside down. In the worst-case scenario, it could even affect the nearby buildings and civilians, threatening the lives of the masses. They couldn't just ignore it. As time passed, Huolai and the trio in suits became more and more disagreeable with each other. Huolai wouldn't easily listen to the trio's promises. He knew that even if he obediently gave in, they wouldn't let him go. The identity of a player in real life was a secret, but it wasn't that important. For those that could be trusted, such as Wu Tong's police station, Chen Guang's Heavens Division, or players that had signed a party contract, they could communicate with each other in real life, and the benefits would definitely outweigh the disadvantages. However, for strangers who weren't familiar with each other, exposing their identity meant exposing themselves to a very dangerous situation. No matter how strong a player was in the game, if they were targeted in real life, they might be killed in their sleep or at any other time with a long-range sniper rifle. No matter how capable you were in the game, others could easily kill you in real life. That was Huolai's current situation. Moreover, the other party was stronger than him in both the game and in real life. They were afraid that he would rise to power in the future and seek revenge against them. At the same time, even if he didn't achieve much in the future, taking revenge against them was very simple. All he had to do was expose the trio's whereabouts and identity, and there would always be greedier and more tyrannical players appearing in front of him. So, he made a decision. Under the slightly frightened gazes of the trio in suits, Huolai first took a step back. Then, light flashed in his palm, and a pitch-black ball appeared at his right hand. The moment the ball appeared, it grabbed everyone's attention. It lay quietly on Huolai's palm, looking just like an ordinary bowling ball. However, the cold and murderous aura emanating from it could be transmitted to the hearts of Wu Tong and the others through the surveillance cameras. Bureau of Martial Arts. Give the order to attack. We can't delay any longer. That's right. We have no idea how powerful a Grey D bomb is. There are more than 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. If it really explodes, what if, at the very least, we have to let them know that they're being watched so that they have some fear? We have to take care of the conflicts between normal civilians, and we have to take care of the conflicts between players. Bureau Chief, give the order. I'll go in and try to communicate with them. After a brief moment of shock, the police officers were a little excited. Those who were chosen by the game were extraordinary people. They all had extremely firm willpower, extraordinary abilities, and courage and responsibility that ordinary people found hard to achieve. These player police officers did not forget their original duties just because they had the identity of a player in the game. On the contrary, they became even more determined. Regardless of whether it was their studies in the police academy or what they had seen and heard after they had devoted themselves to work, it had made their sense of responsibility even stronger. This was also the reason why Wu Tong had chosen to bring them along. Given the current situation, whoever rushed in first would be the one sacrificed if the bomb was detonated. However, none of these people retreated. In their minds, they were thinking about the other 20,000 people in Xinhua Industrial Park. Perhaps not everyone in the police force would have such a high level of awareness, but the few people chosen by Wu Tong could really do it. Seeing that there was no time to delay, Wu Tong waved her hand. Everyone back off. I'll go in alone. No, Bureau Chief. Even though you're a grade D player, you won't be able to withstand this bomb. That's right. It doesn't matter if we sacrifice ourselves. There will always be a lot of grade E police officers in the Bureau that haven't been discovered yet. There will definitely be a lot of people in the Municipal Bureau. However, Bureau Chief, you're a grade D police officer, 1 in 10,000. If you sacrifice yourself, it won't be worth it. One of the toughest police officers objected without thinking. The others were not so straightforward, but once someone took the lead, the others also took the initiative to ask for battle. Everyone calm down. Bureau Chief, I just called Minister Chun when I went over there to investigate. It won't be long before he arrives. Wang Long swallowed his saliva and said aloud, Minister Chun? Some police officers did not react. Wang Long explained again, the Minister of Heaven, Chun Guang. Everyone suddenly understood, and their hearts became a lot more relaxed. However, the way everyone secretly looked at Wu Tong was a little strange. Since a long time ago, there had been rumors in the 5 capital police system that Chun Guang had a close relationship with the fiery bureau chief, but she had always been stubborn and refused to admit it. She only said that the two of them were brother and sister by marriage. If it was someone else, they might have joked that this god's sister was most likely that god's sister. However, the other party was Wu Tong. Everyone could only guess, but no one dared to joke with her. They did not even dare to gossip in private, for fear that they would be dragged out to train alone. Now that the minister was personally handling this matter, the bureau chief had to admit it even if he did not want to. Wu Tong turned around and glared at Wang Long. What are you doing? You called the Minister of Heaven for such a small matter. What's the point if word gets out? What will others say about me, Wu Tong? What will they say about our Xinhua branch? Then wouldn't I become a soft bureau chief who uses my personal connections and can only rely on a man to protect me? Wang Long was stunned. He did not expect her to be so angry. In addition, your explanation of concealing your true intentions here is very strange. We all know whether you're soft or not, and you're definitely not soft. But aren't you admitting that Minister Chun is protecting you? Seeing that Wang Long did not understand, Wu Tong explained again, Sai, you won't understand even if I tell you. The Minister of Heaven is a national treasure, and the Minister of Heaven is even more important. Although Chen Guang was an easygoing person, he didn't treat his identity as anything important, and he didn't treat his identity seriously. But we can't be like him. He can even lie at home and play games when he has nothing to do, but he just can't take on missions like ours, understand? This was the first time a player was enforcing the law in the national police system. In the future, it might become a model. If he had to step in for such a small matter, others would think that the strength of the Chinese police players was too weak. Although the news will only spread among the players, since the player rate of our Xinhua branch is so high. What about the C6? Where's the CIA? What about the KGB? This is a major event that will affect the entire world. Wang Long finally understood. As expected of the bureau chief, you really have foresight. Then, Wang Long's eyes unconsciously floated to the tablet in Wu Tong's hand. His face stiffened, and he pointed to it and said, it seems that Director Chun has already entered the Martial Arts Bureau. When did he go in? Wu Tong looked down and cried out in surprise. It turned out that Chun Guang had already appeared in the warehouse in a rather domineering manner. The trio, in suits and Huolai, who were originally confronting each other, jumped in fright. Who are you? The D-grade player among the trio, in suits, reacted the fastest. He turned around and shouted angrily. Huolai, on the other hand, was calmer. He only glanced in Chun Guang's direction from the corner of his eyes. You are? Chun Guang ignored him. Instead, he carefully looked up and down at the situation. In fact, he had purposely bypassed Wu Tong and snuck in directly because the one who called was Wang Long and not her. This proved that she did not want to contact him. If he had communicated with Wu Tong first, she might have come up with all sorts of excuses, which would have been a waste of time. Now it's all good. I don't care who it is. No matter who it is that wants to cause trouble, I'll slap them flat first. Then all of you can go and cultivate obediently. However, when Qin Guangjin saw Huo Lai's face, he was fiercely shaken. If you remember correctly, this should be someone who had already died in the real world. World Sand. Qin Guang asked doubtfully. Huo Lai and the trio, in suits, also recognized him. He was the only S-grade player in the world, the undefeated legend among humans. Whether it was in traditional fields or anything else, Qin Guang was unparalleled in the world. The trio was at a loss at first, then despair. Since this person had appeared, it seemed that all their efforts today would be in vain. Huo Lai, on the other hand, was relieved. From a moral point of view, he was the one who was robbed of his resources. He was also the weaker party. His reputation as an all-rounder had always been good. Since he was here, he must have come to uphold justice. However, what did he mean by world sand? Huo Lai pointed at himself. Mr. Chun, are you talking about me? I don't know who you are talking about, but I believe in Hua. The Hua of the famous Han Dynasty writer Hua Tsubing. His name is Huo Lai. Not world sand. That's weird. These two looked exactly the same. Even their temperaments were similar. It was impossible for there to be two people who looked so similar in this world. During the world-shattering war, World Sand was the only one who could fight against Qin Guang. Qin Guang had a deep memory of it. It was impossible for him to remember it wrongly. Qin Guang was puzzled. What was going on? Your ability in the game is to control dust, right? Huo Lai's mouth was wide open. How did you know? This time, it was Qin Guang's turn to scratch his head. It's a mess. Everything is a mess. The person who died in his hands was resurrected. However, his identity was completely different. He was no longer an assassin who was adopted since young. His surname was also not sure. Forget it. Keep the bomb. It's useless. Since I'm already here, you guys better know your place. Qin Guang planned to calm the situation first before interrogating them. Mr. Chun, if there is nothing else, can we leave first? The D-grade player among the trio, in suits, asked. Qin Guang looked back at him and smiled. What do you think? Chapter 1243. The three men in suits looked at each other. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that such a small matter would attract the S-grade Guru Qin Guang, and he seemed to know Hala. That Hala, this is just a misunderstanding. The D-grade suited man saw that the situation was not good and took the initiative to admit defeat. Qin Guang first looked at the former world sand, now Hala, and his ears twitched slightly. Dense footsteps could be heard from afar. Wu Tong must have discovered the situation inside and was rushing over with her men. Since Wu Tong was coming, then Hala had to keep the bomb in his hand. Hala, didn't you hear what I said? Put your bomb away. Mr. Chun, Hala was a little hesitant. It seemed that Qin Guang wanted to uphold justice for him, but this bomb was the only thing he could rely on at the moment. What if this Mr. Chun was actually greedy? I know what you're thinking. Don't joke around. Even if a D-grade bomb exploded in my mouth, I wouldn't even blink. Hala's body trembled, thinking that this was reasonable. He immediately laughed at himself and kept the bomb at the same time. The three of you come here. If I find any of you disobedient, you'll be a corpse in the next second. Believe me, I'll do what I say. The three men in suits approached with a bitter face and shrunk shoulders, looking like they really had no other way. Qin Guang nodded and simply started the case. That's right. Now let Hala speak first. You tell me what's going on. A trace of hatred flashed in Hala's eyes. Mr. Chun, these three people are a team in the game. They teamed up with me for a short period of time in the last mission. I originally thought that it would be over after the mission ended, but I didn't expect them to record my characteristics and then find me in real life. They want me to hand over all the reward points and the D-grade bomb that I was holding in my hand just now. The situation was similar to what he had guessed. Qin Guang commented, "This is all because of your poor pseudonym. How can there be someone who sounds exactly the same as you? If I were you, I definitely wouldn't call you Huolia, but Monk Sha, or something like that. In any case, your ability is to play with sand. After lecturing Hala, Chen Guang turned to look at the three men in suits. What else do you have to say? You're quite capable. You're planning to rob us first, then kill us to silence us, right? Mr. Chun, he was slandering me. That's not the case at all. Oh, do you have another explanation? Come on, try making up a story to convince me. Chen Guang was very good at reading people. In just a few seconds, he could clearly see who was telling the truth and who was lying. In front of the most powerful best actor in history, your half-assed lying abilities are simply not enough at all. Back in the game, he framed the three of us and almost got us killed. We're just here to demand an explanation from him. The bomb that he had was originally our loot. He ambushed us at the last moment and stole it from us. We were so angry that we came up with ways to find him. A middle-aged man from the back of the three men in suits finally spoke up. It was originally very difficult to find him. Luckily, I happen to be a major shareholder of Shundatong and the person in charge of the administrative department. Coincidentally, he's been behaving very strangely recently. His name is Hala. We observed him for a whole month before we confirmed it was him. Hala immediately retorted, I didn't steal anything from you. You're slandering me. The D-grade suit man retorted, Oomph. You may look like you're not very capable, but you're actually very cunning. You might be able to fool us, but you can't fool Mr. Chun. Chen Guang could not be bothered to expose them, since Wu Tong would be arriving soon. He could leave the three of them to Wu Tong. As for Hala, he could consider directly absorbing him into the Heaven Division. In another old world, Hala was the strongest assassin of the Shattered, who had died by his hands. The Shattered was the sworn enemy of the Guangding General Headquarters. In the New World, he had saved his life and absorbed him into the Heaven Division that had evolved from the General Directorate of Light and Stability. Everything was truly destined by the heavens. Raise your hands. Chen Guang, don't think that we're afraid of you. Even though you're an S grade in the game, this is reality. As Chen Guang was thinking, the suit man who had been standing at the back without saying a word suddenly pulled out a gun from his waist. The black muzzle was aimed at Chen Guang's head. Chen Guang turned around to look at him. It was a shiny revolver with a large caliber and a thick and long barrel. One look, and one could tell that it was an extraordinary weapon. The D-grade suit man's expression suddenly changed. He no longer tried to defend himself. Instead, he looked at Chen Guang with a smug expression, thinking that he had Chen Guang in his grasp. Chen Guang's expression did not change. You guys haven't seen the video I took at American Airlines, LAX? Do you think this thing is useful to me? What's that? The three men in suits were confused. Chen Guang turned to look at Hala. You don't know either? Hala shook his head. Mr. Chun, why don't you raise your hands? At most, I'll just hand over the thing. Chen Guang was at a loss. It seemed that the conflict at LAX had never happened in the New World. It was not surprising. China was the strongest country in the New World, and the status of the Chinese overseas was quite high. There was no basis for racial discrimination. People would kneel down and lick their boots. Regardless of whether it was himself or any other Chinese, it was impossible for them to suffer such severe unfair treatment on American Airlines. No wonder they thought he was afraid of guns. Forget it. It's not like it matters anyway. Chen Guang smiled and shrugged. He turned back to look at the man with the gun. All right, you can try to shoot. If you can kill me, I'll consider you good. He did not ask them if they had never watched High God before. They definitely knew, but in their minds, this was the strength he had displayed in the game, and he could not use it in real life. Put the gun down. At that moment, a shout came from the door of the warehouse. Chen Guang did not need to turn around to know that it was Wu Tong. Her voice was very loud. When she saw Chen Guang being pointed at with a gun, she lost her usual rationality and calmness. If the hostage had been someone else, the experienced Wu Tong would not have jumped out so rashly. She would have chosen to calmly hide in a corner. She would have either urgently dispatched a sniper or relied on her own ability to snipe from the shadows. But now, she was a little out of her mind. The three men in suits and Hala's reaction was even more intense. When they turned their heads, they saw Wu Tong raising her gun and walking forward step by step. The black muzzle of the gun was aimed directly at the middle-aged man with the revolver. Behind her were a few other police officers. Although they felt that Wu Tong's actions were a little rash, since the director had made the decision, they could not drag her down. Only the player police officers, who were especially good at sniping and shooting, quietly snuck over from another direction, planning to ambush from the side. At that moment, Chen Guang turned around to comfort Wu Tong. He pressed his hand down and said, "Don't be nervous. This is nothing. All right, put the gun down. You're no different from a toy in my eyes." Chen Guang did not care that he was being pointed at with a gun. He reached out and grabbed the gun as if he was going to snatch someone else's toy. "No!" Wu Tong and Wang Long shouted at the same time. The middle-aged man in the suit with the gun was stunned for a moment. When he found an opportunity to pull out his gun and point it at Chen Guang, he thought he had successfully turned the tables. Even when the police appeared, he did not take it seriously. After experiencing life and death in the game, the three of them were cruel and merciless people in real life. Now that they had become players and embarked on the path of raiders, even expanding their hunting range to the real world outside of the game, the three of them did not plan to live a peaceful life. Encountering this situation today was already within their expectations. In fact, during their last mission, they had even broken out in a fierce battle with the other party. This time, they encountered Chen Guang and the police, which made the situation more serious. Looking at Chen Guang's palm that was getting closer and closer, the man in the suit with the gun was confused at first. Then, his expression quickly turned ferocious. "You think I don't dare to shoot?" At the same time, the other two quietly put their hands into their pockets, intending to take out their weapons. Chen Guang was expressionless. "No, of course you dare. It's just that I don't care. Also, I deliberately slowed down. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to react and your gun would be gone." Bang! There was a loud noise. Thick smoke and dust rose from the revolver, and the deafening echo echoed in the warehouse, making everyone's ears buzz. In the end, he could not hold it in. This special, powerful revolver did not disappoint him. Just by listening to the sound, he knew that it was several times more powerful than ordinary ones. The scene became silent for a moment. Even Wu Tong's face was pale as she looked in Chen Guang's direction. Chen Guang still maintained his right hand forward and did not move. The man in the suit was stunned because he clearly saw that in the gap between the index and middle fingers of Chen Guang's right hand, there was a powerful explosive shell that he had personally loaded. Unexpectedly, it was clamped by someone's hand. Taking advantage of the moment when he was stunned, Chen Guang shook his hand and took the gun from his hand. Then his figure flashed, and the other two men were also disarmed. He crushed these things into scrap metal in front of everyone and threw them on the ground. Chen Guang shrugged. Okay, tie them up. He didn't plan on letting these three people go. He couldn't care less about the fighting and killing in the game. This was the survival of the fittest. This was also in line with the rules of human evolution. Those who were eliminated were the weak. If they really had talent, people like Hala or Shersha would become strong in the game sooner or later. Hala, for example, was only grade E, but he had already obtained grade D tools. In addition, his ability also gave him extremely strong survivability and combat power. Luck was an indispensable condition on the road to becoming strong, and talent was even more indispensable. Hala had both. In time, it was not impossible for the current Hala to reach the height of Shersha. At that time, he would play an important role in the battle between humans and Protoss. However, if such a genius fell in the modern world and died in the hands of three people with evil thoughts and no specialties, who only knew how to steal from others, that would be the biggest joke in the world. Now that they had spread their influence to the real world, they had to apologize. Chen Guang planned to be a model. These three people had to die, not only in the game, but also in the real world. Later, he would think of a way to use the Heavenly Division's methods. Whether in the game or in the real world, he would report this as a model. Naturally, many people with evil thoughts would think twice. This was the purpose of the existence of an official organization like the Heavenly Division, to maintain order and preserve the strength and potential of humans in the game as much as possible. Unknowingly, Chen Guang had entered the mode of the Heavenly Division's minister. Hey, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Oh, right, Hala, this is my name card. When you return, report here. Just say that I asked you to go. Congratulations, you've been recruited by me. Hala's face was blank. He still had not recovered from the shock of Chen Guang catching the bullet with his finger. Seeing that he was in a daze, Chen Guang grunted. That's right, you've been recruited by the Heavenly Division. Heavenly Division. Hala was stunned for a moment. Then, he fell into a state of ecstasy. As a player who had gone through several missions, he naturally knew about the Heavenly Division. In the previous mission, the temporary leader of the team was just an ordinary member of the Heavenly Division. Although he was only a D rank, the astonishing strength and intelligence that the other party displayed during the mission made him fascinated. At that time, he had taken the initiative to ask to join the Heavenly Division in the game, but was rejected. That, Mr. Chun, don't you need a political review? He still found it hard to believe. Snapping his fingers, Chen Guang replied, My words are the background check, so you just have to go. Oh, right, Sister Wu Tong, these 3 people can be sentenced to death, right? If it's not convenient for you, I'll do it myself. Wu Tong swallowed hard and then patted Chen Guang's shoulder. You little brat, I'm almost scared to death. Won't killing these 3 dirty your hands for no reason? Don't worry, leave it to me. Mr. Chun, please spare us. The 3 middle-aged men in suits knelt down and begged for mercy. Chen Guang, who was about to leave, turned his head slightly. If it was in the past, I might have been soft-hearted and let you guys go. After all, the 3 of you did not kill anyone in front of me. However, I'm sorry, things are different now. If there's a next life, you should try to be good people. Chapter 1244. After saying that, he was still a little worried. Forget it. I'll help you take care of these 3 first. Although the 3 men in suits had been disarmed, who knew if they had other hidden cards up their sleeves as players. To prevent any unexpected incidents from occurring out of nowhere, Chen Guang really played the villain this time. Before leaving, he simply slapped the 3 men in suits 7 or 8 times, then turned around and left without looking back. This time, the 3 men in suits were completely in despair. Originally, they really had the idea of summoning their inventory in the game after Chen Guang left and catching the police officers off guard. Now, all their bones had been broken by Chen Guang. Not to mention counterattacking, they were almost out of breath. Wu Tong, Wang Long, and the others looked at each other. Chen Guang's calm expression when he was dealing the finishing blow really made them feel a little anxious. This guy felt like he wasn't smashing 3 people, but 3 ants. Looking at Chen Guang's back, Wu Tong frowned slightly. Why did this kid suddenly seem like a different person? He wasn't like this before. Officer, can I leave now? Hala appeared to be calmer than Wu Tong. In his mind, the strongest human should have this kind of bearing. Clear rewards and punishments, swift and decisive. Hala asked himself if he had done anything wrong ever since he became a player. Although his parents were ordinary wage earners, they taught him to be a person with principles and morals. When he was poor, he shouldn't look down on himself, and when he was rich, he shouldn't forget himself. It was precisely because of this belief in life that Hala, who came from a famous school and majored in logistics, first rejected many high-paying jobs in large companies and chose to start from the bottom in this company. After becoming a player, he didn't choose to resign, but to better complete his job. Of course, the experience in the game also changed him a lot. He became calmer and more determined, and even a little bloodthirsty in the face of illusionary beasts. He also realized that he had this side to him, but whether it was in reality or in the game, he still behaved calmly, only doing his job step by step, and, at the same time in the game, steadily advancing step by step. So far, he had never done anything shameful. He believed in a completely different creed from the 3 men in suits. Perhaps it was because Mr. Chun had a pair of eyes that could see through one's heart that he was willing to trust me and let me become a member of the Tian Division. That was the strongest organization in all of Huaxia. No, the entire world. This was a common occurrence. When a quest was issued, several human players from the player's birthplace would stand up to find someone to match the secret code. Then, they would quickly form a reliable and trustworthy party that others would envy. Although it was free to fight solo, it was human nature to team up. Only by forming a team and relying on the strength of a team could human players quickly strengthen themselves in the game and protect their lives. After all, the Protoss were unscrupulous when they encountered lone humans. However, if a large party of 10 or even dozens of human players appear at the same time, even a B-level Protoss would have to think twice. Obviously, the players of the Tian Division did not sign a contract. They were often successful in forming a party. There was only one reason. They had many people, many strong players, and they belonged to the same organization in reality. Furthermore, they were strictly managed. Even without the restriction of a party contract, these people were willing to abide by the rules and restrictions of their own organization and trusted their companions. There were many other organizations like this, but there was no doubt that the Tian Division was the strongest. Most of the Chinese players who could naturally communicate with each other wanted to join the Tian Division. However, their organization was very strict, and they only recruited members in reality. Ordinary players could not get in even if they wanted to. In addition, although the Tian Division did not easily recruit members, their attitude towards other players in the game was relatively harmonious. They would almost never bully others. Instead, they directed all their hostility towards the powerful Protoss faction. Every time they formed a temporary party, they would recruit many ordinary players to join them in the game. As long as they were willing to obey orders throughout the mission and do what they were supposed to do, at least in this mission, these players who joined the Tian Division's temporary party would have the highest survival rate and a more generous reward. So far, the Tian Division had proven their strength through the few game missions they had participated in. Unless they bumped into a crazy A-class or S-class Protoss, the Tian Division was simply unstoppable. Not only that, the popularity and strength of the Tian Division had also brought about another change. Looking at the entire world, because of the strength of China, the Western countries had tried their best to promote the threat of the East. This had greatly hindered the promotion of the Chinese language. Everyone knew that the Chinese were especially good at assimilating others. The best medium for assimilation was language, followed by cultural invasion. Of course, the Western countries would not just wait for their doom. This was great. In reality, they could not simply use force. Even if China was already so strong, they still had to maintain restraint. However, there was no such thing in the game. The game was crueler than reality. It followed a simpler law of the jungle. The rather merciless law of the jungle forced all players of other languages to submit to a bigger fist deep in their hearts. The fist had the final say. Those who did not listen would often regret it. Those who did not understand were even more miserable. Therefore, the most direct observation of the Tian Division's change in reality was that there were more people around the world who took the initiative to learn the Chinese language. Those who were chosen as players were mostly intelligent people. They learned things with great pressure and efficiency. Now, if there were any company executives or genius students overseas who suddenly developed a strong interest in the Chinese language, there was a high chance that they would be players if they wanted to give it a try. In the past 2 months, many international friends had changed from being unable to speak the same language at the beginning and could only hope that the Huaxia people were willing to speak English or other minor languages with them. Now, they could communicate in simple Mandarin. For example, something, "Brother, you are so handsome. Sister, you are so beautiful. Can you bring me along? Can I join you guys? I am very obedient. I am a good person. Please take me in." The influence that the Tian Division brought to China was evident. So many people dreamed of joining such a big organization. Now, he had become an internal member just because of a sentence from Mr. Chun. This was simply too blissful. Thinking of this, Haley clenched his fists and secretly decided that he would not let Mr. Chin down. Wu Tong turned back to look at him. then looked at the three men in suits who were lying on the ground motionlessly. "All right, just follow Chen Guang's instructions. Now go to the place," he said. "I also do not know why he thinks so highly of you, but his foresight is always right." After leaving the Exinhua Industrial Park, Chen Guang did not stroll around. Instead, he returned to school. No one would believe this, but the reason he returned to school was because he had to take a makeup exam the day after tomorrow. He had to pass the makeup exam for 2 consecutive semesters. If it was not for Chen Guang's strong reputation and his previous promise that he would not mess it up, the school and institute leaders might have helped him take a leave of absence. Truth be told, Chen Guoli and Feng Rong no longer cared about his studies. Speaking of which, Chen Guang felt that he couldn't let the 12 years he spent to get into university go to waste. No matter what, he had to graduate and get his hands on his books. This had become an obsession that he could not get rid of. Of course, he was also thinking about another matter. The Tian division could not contact Wen, and the Wen family could not contact her either. These 2 days, he had called her at least 5 or 6 times, but no one picked up. He sent WeChat, QQ, or even text messages, but she did not reply. It was as if she had disappeared from this world. Chen Guang felt a little uneasy. In the past, he had confidence in Wen's ability. He thought that in this world, other than himself, no one could hurt a single hair on her. But as time passed, his heart was not at ease. "You should have replied to me." With no other choice, he decided to first go to Wen's roommate in school. This could be considered as an indirect way to inquire about her situation. At the very least, he had to know what she was doing before she disappeared and what was going on in her head. Chapter 1245. After returning to school, Chen Guang went straight to the School of Economics and Management, where Wen studied in the Department of International Trade. As he became more and more famous, more and more people knew him, and his popularity grew. Gradually, the students of Gokyo University could no longer maintain absolute calmness. The more famous he was, the more attractive his photo and autograph were. Moreover, everyone knew that Chen Guang was easy to talk to. As long as he was not in a hurry, he would not refuse anyone. Therefore, there were more and more people who wanted to ask him for a photo or an autograph. He was not in school for a long time last semester. People in the dormitory and class blocked him many times. Others returned without success, and this trend gradually died down. Right now, if Chen Guang were to swagger around the school, who knew how lively it would be? In order to avoid causing too much of a stir in the school, Chen Guang had to wear a full suit when he walked on the road, trying not to let himself become the focus of the crowd. Fortunately, the second semester of the 4th year had just started. It was early spring, and the weather was cool. The 3-piece suit on his face was not too hot, and it was not too eye-catching. With the help of his acting skills, he forcibly reduced his sense of existence in the crowd, and it was really easy for him to find the outside of Wen's professional class. He waited outside the classroom on the 5th floor for about 10 minutes. When the class was over at noon, Chen Guang took the initiative to directly find Wen's 3 roommates in the crowd. He had seen these 3 people more than once before, and he had also eaten with them. However, Wen's relationship with other people in the school was weak. She seemed to be a maverick, and she only nodded to others. Even with her roommates, although she never had a conflict with them, there was always a layer of barrier between them. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The other girls also had complicated feelings for Wen. Outstanding people always had a different kind of attraction to others, whether it was a man or a woman, but Wen was very indifferent, making it impossible for others to get close to her. In addition, as the saying went, the story in University Girls' Dormitory was a book that could not be finished. Their relationship was clearly very good, but they would suddenly harbor resentment. She and she are a small group, but she and she are another small group. She and she are still a small group. There were a total of 4 people in the dormitory, so that they could create 3 WeChat groups. Wen's dormitory was not so complicated, because the other 3 girls were united against outsiders. Sometimes they envied Wen's appearance, temperament, and studies, but sometimes they were jealous. However, Wen had always shown a kind of emotional indifference. Her usual speech and treatment of others were simply impeccable. Her roommates would feel confused and feel that they should not be jealous of her. As for Wenwen's bestie, Chen Guang, her roommate's opinions had also changed over the years. At first, everyone thought that he and Wenwen were from two completely different worlds. But later, everyone hoped that the two of them could be together. A toad wanted to eat swan meat. If the swan was really eaten by a toad, the swan would not be so noble, right? They thought that she was very capable, but in the end, her boyfriend was also ordinary. They really thought that she was a fairy who did not eat the food of the world, but in the end, she still had to eat, and she was not very picky. But after a while, they would feel that it was not worth it for Wenwen. Especially after Zheng, he showed a good impression of Wenwen and tried to take the roundabout route to save the country, giving all kinds of gifts to Wenwen's roommates. This psychological deviation became even more serious. From time to time, he would whisper in Wenwen's ear, saying that Chen Guang was not worthy of her and so on. This was also the reason why Chen Guang did not have any dealings with these three people later. What were you guys talking about? Although Miss Wen was beautiful and charming, the old man was not a cabbage that no one wanted. Okay? What's more, the old man and Miss Wen had a pure friendship. This brother was loyal and really did not have those messy things that you guys said. At that time, his heart was really pure, but the changes that happened later made him a little unprepared. Of course, the current Chen Guang was no longer the same as before. He was like a black chicken that flew into the sky and became a phoenix. The opinions of Wenwen's roommates had already changed 180 degrees. Moreover, they heard that Zheng he had committed a crime and was found out some time ago, and he actually committed suicide to escape punishment. At this time, the image of Chen Guang in the hearts of Miss Wen's roommates was even higher. He was an international big shot, a superstar of the generation, an all-around genius, and an invincible figure who was awesome no matter what he did. The most important thing was that he was super rich, and in fact, he was a little handsome. After the change of opinion, everyone said that it was no wonder that Miss Wen was dismissive of others at that time, but looked at him with special eyes. Maybe Miss Wen had already seen through his potential. It was really infuriating to compare with others. In their hearts, Wenwen really took all the advantages in the world. However, after the gap between the two sides was too big, these people on the contrary lost their jealousy, and their mentality returned to peace. They only secretly regretted that they did not use their relationship with Wenwen to get along well with Chen Guang. However, although they now saw the reality clearly, Chen Guang no longer appeared in the school, and even when Wenwen was gone, these three roommates also sighed helplessly and regretted their past. Chen Guang originally wanted to keep a low profile, but he did not expect that as soon as he and the three people revealed their identities, two of them held their hands and cried out in surprise. "Oh my God, Chen Guang! Oh my God! Chen Guang, why are you here? We all thought that you would never come back to school again." The other person did not call out his name and was just babbling there, completely losing his mind. Chen Guang looked at the three people with a pair of dead fish eyes through his sunglasses. "Damn, you guys are monsters, right? Is there a need to be like this? Forget it. It's not strange if it's like this." If these three people could treat Chen Guang calmly in the past and not look down on him because of his poverty, then they would not be crying out in surprise again and again because of his meteoric rise. The three people's ruckus immediately caused a commotion in the entire hallway of the school building. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Guang could only take off his sunglasses and helplessly glanced at the three people. Then, using a voice that only the three people could hear, he transmitted his inner strength and said, "I really admire you guys. Forget it. We'll meet in half an hour at the Kano Cafe outside the school. Please don't do this again. If there's a stampede, can you take responsibility?" After saying that, Chen Guang simply took off his hat and mask and shouted toward the hallway, "Everyone, don't rush. I'm here to do something today. I'm not taking photos. I'm not signing autographs. Later, I'll take a few days to do this. Everyone, don't get agitated." But it was useless. You said not to get agitated. So I'm not agitated? You don't know how difficult it is to see you now. Seeing this, Chen Guang's head swelled up, and he thought that it was not a good idea to continue like this. No wonder the famous university students in the past did not go to school at all. They were always in trouble, and it was really unbearable. However, he was different from others. Famous university students became famous first, and then they were admitted through a special channel by the university. He, on the other hand, studied quietly for 3 years, and then suddenly soared to the sky. That was why things were so difficult for him. Studies were so important in the eyes of others, and in the future, he would also get a National College Entrance Examination graduation certificate. The special channel for ordinary famous people could not be compared to him. Since that was the case, when he was free, the old man might as well take photos with you for 10 days straight and sign autographs for 10 days straight. There was no problem with his stamina. There were tens of thousands of people in the school, and I would take photos with tens of thousands of people, and then I would sign hundreds of thousands of autographs for you. I would take photos with you until you vomited. I would sign autographs until you vomited. Let's see if you were still coquettish and chaotic. Of course, he also had other ideas. The school would definitely not only have Lin Jingwei and a few other players. Gokyo University was, after all, one of the top 985 universities in the country. Coupled with his influence in the school, the number of fans among his classmates was quite high. Many of the previous flame wars and debates on the internet, the Big Five alumni, were one of the main forces, so the number of players in the school should not be low. It was just that now, everyone was a straggler, without a system or organization. He might as well take this opportunity to sort out the players in the school, and then with the team of Lin Jingwei and a few others as the core, he would create a Big Five alumni association in the game. Although the alumni association could not be compared to heaven, it would definitely only be beneficial to the development of the power of the entire human race in the game. Hearing that he would not take photos or sign autographs today, the students and teachers who were swarming over felt a little disappointed. However, it was difficult to stop the flow of people, and they were still pushed forward by the people behind. Even if they could get a closer look at him, they could go back and brag about it to others. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Guang made up his mind. Damn it, goodbye. He leaped up and actually flew out from the balcony of the 5th floor. That was not all. While flying in the air, he turned around and waved at the crowd, saying loudly, "This is a dangerous move without professional training. Please do not imitate it." I've already said that when it comes to jumping off buildings, the old man is a master. Let's see how chaotic you guys are. Sigh. It's a pity that there is no world in a cup when jumping off a building. Otherwise, my body movements would be 100 times more elegant. While he was complaining in his heart, he suddenly dropped his head and looked down at the satchel on his waist. The heavenly Holy Grail was reacting. Isn't this inappropriate? It came again without saying goodbye. Is the world in a cloud elephant cup so unreasonable? Wait, I seem to have a choice. Chen Guang did not care that he was flying in the air, nor did he care about the people who were looking at him from the balcony. Instead, he focused on feeling the waves coming from the heavenly Holy Grail. That's right, it seemed like he had a choice. He could choose to delay the activation of the mission, and he could even change the mission attributes of the world in a cup within a certain range. The specific situation was as follows. If it was activated immediately, it would indeed be a world of jumping off a building. If he chose to delay it and activate it within the next 7 days, then the world of massacre would appear. The range of choices was huge. Choose one of two. Either jump off a building or massacre. Which one should he choose? Chen Guang only considered for less than half a second. According to the humble opinion of the old man, jumping off a building was definitely more reliable. The casualty rate of the human gamers in the world of massacre was indescribable. At that time, the gamers were the elites of the elites, and there was even a super genius like Chu Zijin who had transformed into a peasant. There were nearly 100 of them, but only a few survived. It was a tragic sight. Though he did not know how amazing the world of jumping off a building would be, the casualty rate would not be higher than that of the world of massacre. After all, the gamers were strengthened in the game, so they should be able to withstand a mere jump off a building. Spirit of the Holy Grail. I choose to jump off a building. he shouted in his heart. Chapter 1246. As soon as he finished speaking, his entire consciousness was sucked into Cloud City with a whoosh. But the Yunqing that appeared in front of him this time made him feel very strange, and he even thought that he had come to the wrong place. The walls were still the same as before, towering into the sky. The statues that he got later were still standing proudly, especially the statue of his strongest physical body, which was the most eye-catching. After all, such a huge statue of a naked man was the only one in the world, and no one was as thick-skinned as him. But now the appearance of a statue was a little strange to Cheng Guang. To be precise, it had no face. The face of a statue had no facial features at all. It was as if a round duck egg stone had been put on it, and then the work was cut short. If the lower half of the statue was not the same as the one that Cheng Guang was familiar with, he really couldn't believe that it was him. Don't ask him why he was so familiar with his figure. Every person with a good figure could answer this question. But what really made him feel strange was not the statue, but the densely packed houses in the whole Yunqing. That's right, the Yunqing in the past was empty. At first glance, it was a huge square. But now the Yunqing that appeared in front of Cheng Guang was densely packed with countless houses. These houses looked similar, with only minor differences. They were all the simplest kind of small square boxes. However, there were too many of them. Looking at them, Cheng Guang couldn't even count them. He only guessed that there should be in the millions. In addition, he also found some differences in all the houses. Most of the houses looked the same. There were 3x3 square boxes that looked like shared private rooms. But from time to time, one or two different houses would appear. They were no longer 3x3 coffin boxes, but 4x4 latrine huts with roofs, eaves, and windows. Above the latrine huts, there were dozens of more beautiful and exquisite small courtyard houses scattered throughout the whole Yunqing. They covered an area of about 8x8. In addition, Cheng Guang also keenly found 7 of the most unique and huge castles. Each castle was about 30 to 40 meters tall, and each had a different style. They occupied an area of at least 10 acres. There was a medieval European-style Gothic castle, a tall Chinese pagoda, a modern mechanical feeling, and a pure black one that looked a bit like an off-road vehicle. Although the other 3 weren't as distinctive, they were no different from the previous 4 in terms of grade and aesthetics. The difference between the 7 castles and the coffin box next to them was like the difference between an elephant and a rabbit. Cheng Guang was at a loss. When did his empty Yunqing suddenly become a bustling city that could accommodate millions of people? What kind of scientific principle was that? Also, what was up with the magnificent buildings in the center of Cloud City that looked like ancient palaces? Who the hell was going overboard? Without the permission of the real owner, the old man, to build an illegal building here. You even took my spot, and it was cultivated to such a crappy level. It was as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know that he was super rich and classless. Do you believe that I can call 100,000 city enforcement officers to tear it down in minutes? Why are you still in a daze outside? Come in. While he was cursing in his mind, a familiar voice suddenly came from the palace. It was Liuli. You're back, Cheng Guang asked in surprise. Then he suddenly came back to his senses. Could this shabby house really be mine? He suddenly felt that it was pleasing to the eye. Liuli replied to him angrily. What do you mean I'm back? I want to leave, but I don't have the ability, okay? Then where did you go before? Why didn't I see you when I came in? Isn't it because you're so bad that the entire Holy Grail changed? I had to clean up the mess for you. You can blame me for that? Cheng Guang floated into the palace and saw that Liuli was lying on a comfortable sofa in the middle of the magnificent hall with her legs crossed. However, the computer desk in front of her was still the same as before, which was very incongruous with the style of the hall. Cheng Guang couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He asked, What's going on outside and in this palace? What exactly happened? How come there are no signs at all? Liuli put down the mouse, looked back at him, shrugged, and made an innocent face. What if I said that when the world in the cup ends this time, it won't be like this the next time you come in? What would you think? Chen Guang frowned and thought for a moment. He asked, "You mean these houses are prepared for the players?" Liu Li finally showed her rare enthusiasm. "That's right. Now, every time the World in the Cup is triggered, the players will have to go through a transit process. Your Cloud City realm is the transit station. Every house here represented a player's residence. To other players, these residences were absolute territories that they could not enter. In addition, fighting is absolutely prohibited in Cloud City. It is a safe zone for all players. After a while, the players' spiritual bodies will gradually take shape in their respective houses. In addition, there will be about an hour of buffer before the official start of each mission. You may not have noticed, but in the southeast corner of Cloud City, there's a very large open space. The players will conduct transactions there using reward points as currency." Chen Guang pondered for a moment. "So, different houses represent different levels of players? The shabbiest coffin box is the residence of E-level players, and the slightly better ones are for D-level players? Sihiyuan is for C-level players? But why are there 7 castles? Isn't this a bit too different from Sihiyuan?" Liu Li rolled her eyes at him. "You're really forgetful." Chen Guang was stunned at first, and then he revealed a look of joy. "You mean, these 7 castles are the tinder I left in the Slaughter World?" Liu Li sighed. "I can't sense what you did in the Slaughter World, but I think it should be like this. After all, when the players first appeared in the game mission, they had C-level or close to B-level strength. Then, in the next few missions, they seemed to have entered a different space from the others. Each time, the harvest was very rich, and now they're all A-level. This time, Chen Guang could not help but be surprised. There's actually such a thing. However, he could not understand why these people did not appear in the eyes of the players earlier. So much so that the human players still thought that he was the strongest human being, an S-level, and those below him were all C-levels. Liu Li, who had seen through his doubts, said, "Maybe it's because they came into contact with a new cup world before the real mission started. When the history of this whole new world was fabricated, there was an ethical conflict, which is equivalent to a bug in the computer program. So, from the beginning, they were isolated in different mission spaces and could not come out of the castles to come into contact with others." Chen Guang nodded. "That's most likely the case. All right, what about this palace? This is yours. The higher the player's level, the more luxurious the residence looks. Doesn't this palace suit your identity as the only Super S-level player?" "Wait, Super S-level? Yup, but don't others say that I'm an S-level? That's because they're weak, so they can only set their sights so high. Don't you have any F***king idea how capable you are? There's still some truth to that. I'm just being humble. Oh, and that statue. Why do you have so many questions? It's the same principle as a house. When the new cup world is triggered, your appearance will change every time you come in. So, the statue has become a faceless man now. It's how it usually looks." Chen Guang was relieved. Although it was quite awkward to put the statue of the naked man in front of countless people all over the world, as long as his face was covered, no one would know that it was him. It was fine. There was no way that someone would be able to recognize him from the statue's penis, right? This shameless fellow. Doesn't he know how to put a towel on his waist? That's right. This is too shameful. Wu Tong and Tang Ying walked out of their respective huts, one after another, and gathered together as they spoke. "Sister Shuriyue, the more I look at the statue, the more familiar it seems. It looks like Chen Guang's figure. How did you know? There are many boys with good figures in this world. There's no mark on the statue." How could Jiang Yage tell Jean Shuriyue that she recognized him from the overbearing shape of the cavernous body? In a corner of Cloud City, Wenwen walked out of the courtyard house. She raised her head to look at the statue from afar and blushed. Then, she quickly lowered her head and walked toward the market. No one noticed that behind the seemingly ordinary walls of Wenwen's courtyard house, there was an exquisite house made of jade. "Sweetheart, do you think that every S-level player has a statue? Then when we reach S-level, if we also have a statue like this, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? That's not possible. Also, this statue is very strange. Previously, when the minister didn't move, the this thing was also here. I just realized that Faceless looks very similar to the minister, but it might not be him. Sweetheart, when you get back, pull down his pants and take a picture for me to see and compare. Get lost. Chun Guang really didn't expect that there would actually be so many people who recognized him from the statue. After all, many people have been miserably screwed over by his strongest pile driver in history. Their memories were so deep that they could recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Outside, people were coming out of various houses one after another. However, Chun Guang wasn't in a hurry to go out for a stroll. Instead, he fiddled with a computer in the depths of his palace. In front of him were densely packed statistics. Looking at these things, he, the owner of the Holy Grail, at least regained some sense of ownership. Total number of E-level players, 11374598. Total number of D-level players, 89125. Total number of C-level players, 71. Total number of B-level players, 1. Total number of A-level players, 7. It wasn't just these simple statistics. The information was even detailed to the specific abilities of each player. Chun Guang could look up these things at will. He could even use the non-existent surveillance cameras to directly see what was happening in each player's home. This meant that in the realm of the Holy Grail, all human players had no secrets in front of him. That's right, that's more like it. The old man was now considered a master. Chun Guang thought to himself as he watched a blonde girl with big waves and blue eyes, who he didn't know at all. She was twisting her naked body in front of the mirror in his room, as if admiring his makeshift body. That's right, which heartless genius could actually surpass others and reach B-level in one fell swoop? He simply didn't give others a way out. Fortunately, the old man was born with cheats. He had even brought 7 other people with him. This B-level fellow must have relied on his own abilities to rush up. This was too much of a beast. Clicking on this person's information, Chun Guang was elated. It was actually my big miss one. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the public square outside. It's open, it's open. The door is open. An expert is coming out. This must be at least A-level, right? Quite a number of people were gathered outside one of the castles. The castle's door slowly opened. Chu Zijin covered her eyes and walked out slowly. She had been confined in this strange world for too long. Finally, she could go out and take a breather. Looking at the densely packed crowd outside, Chu Zijin's face gradually bloomed into a smile. She thought to herself, our Tianguang group is the strongest. Chapter 1247. After a while, not only did the gates of Chu Zijin's castle open, but the other 6 castles that had never made a move before also slowly opened their doors. Some were strong, some thin, some tall, some short, some old, and some young. Since then, the 7 Pyro Company players that Chun Guang had survived the first massacre world officially came out of seclusion. As soon as the 7 of them appeared in the outside world, they immediately caused a commotion. Countless players watched from below, and many of them even took the initiative to introduce themselves in an attempt to befriend the 7 of them. Some people even kowtowed and tried to become their followers, even if it was just a verbal promise. For example, if they were lucky enough to be assigned to the same quest space during this quest, they would ask the other party to take care of them. It was not that these players who took the initiative to seek refuge with them were not strong-willed, but there were millions of people in the world, and everyone had different principles in life. Some people were stubborn and persistent in overcoming difficulties with their own strength, but others were good at using all the resources they could use to look at anything calmly. Before making a decision, they would analyze the pros and cons in their minds. Bowing down to the strong might seem like a spineless act on the surface, but if they could really befriend these strong people, the benefits they could reap would be unimaginable. In the game, they could face a life-and-death crisis at any time. Teaming up with the strong would give them the greatest sense of security. They could also follow behind the strong and challenge opponents that they could not possibly defeat. However, these 7 people seemed to be very aloof and disdainful of others taking the initiative to seek refuge with them. They had no intention of expanding their influence or forming a team at all. Actually, these 7 castles were not built in a day. At first, they were just 7 courtyards. Although they were much better than the coffins next to them and appeared to be unique, there were more than just these 7 courtyards in the vast city. However, the situation changed later. According to the people of the family who lived near the 7 castles, they watched the 7 courtyards change almost every time they were given a mission. When the other courtyards remained still, the 7 courtyards turned into 7 skyscrapers at an extremely fast speed, and then into 7 castles at an extremely fast speed. Other than the palace in the center of the city, there were no other buildings more magnificent than these 7 castles. As the 7 great castles continued to expand, the houses that were originally evenly distributed around the 7 great castles were constantly pushed away. The density of the houses around the 7 great castles increased, making the 7 great castles seem even more mysterious and special. What was even stranger was that no matter how noisy the people outside were, no matter how astonishing the treasures appeared in the trading market, the 7 castles remained motionless. No one could enter, but no one opened the door and walked out either. Everyone was baffled. In this game, players did not have to worry about their true identity being easily exposed. After all, every time they entered the game, their appearance would be randomly reset. As long as they did not expose their characteristics too obviously like some people, they could communicate with others without worry. The trading market was very important to the players. Everyone would receive different rewards from quests, and everyone's awakened abilities were different as well. A tool that was completely useless to one person could be a priceless treasure to another. Therefore, the players cherished the precious 1-hour buffer period before the start of each quest. They would often seize every minute and second to exchange with others in the trading market, set up stalls to sell their useless tools, and then use their reward points to buy some things that they needed. Although there were currently no large-scale trading intermediaries in the market, several large official organizations led by the Heavenly Division had a unique advantage when it came to trading. With a large number of members, the number of tools that could be obtained from each quest would be more. After the internal system distribution, the internal members' needs would be satisfied first. However, there would still be some people who could not be satisfied because of their special abilities or the types of tools that they needed. Similarly, there would also be some tools that were too unorthodox to be distributed. At this time, the Heavenly Division would bring the surplus tools to the trading market and first trade them for reward points. Then, they would send members who were good at dealing with people to search for the tools that the members needed to buy. For a large organization like the Heavenly Division that had close to 100,000 people, even if they managed to slip through their fingers, they would still be able to exchange more than 10,000 tools for each quest. Though the other large organizations were unable to reach such a scale, they were still superior to the solo gamers. Over the past 2 months or so, almost every player had obtained some sort of benefit from the trade market. After all, this was an absolute safe zone. Everyone was free to buy and sell, and no one could force anyone to buy or sell. As long as one had reward points, one would be able to find a tool that was suitable for one's abilities. Even if it wasn't perfect, it was better than having useless tools. However, the owners of the 7 castles ignored all the benefits. No one knew what they were thinking. Now that the castle gates were opened, the 7 strongest human gamers, who were second only to Qinguang, were finally revealed to everyone. This was a huge boost to the morale of the gamers. Though there was competition among the human gamers, their biggest enemy was the celestial race, who viewed the lives of the mortals as worthless grass. Peasant and his companions were perplexed. They felt that their memories were in a mess. When the game started, the 7 of them didn't know that they were gamers. Chu Zijin, the producer of Hyper God, was the person who inserted the second half of the video of Chun Guang fighting the monsters into the main show. She had a different view of the second half of the video. She didn't doubt the authenticity of the footage. The video was given to her by Chun Guang. Chun Guang wouldn't speak without thinking, so there must be a reason behind it. She didn't expect the footage to be in the game. In her mind, she didn't know about the game. This was obviously contradictory to the seven castles. With her talent, if she wasn't chosen, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Even within Tianguang media, there was a similar situation. An employee who was fortunate enough to become a player did not believe in the heresy and took the initiative to test Chu Zijin. Unexpectedly, as soon as the words left his mouth, his identity was immediately reset. He was completely stripped of his identity as a player and returned to the life of an ordinary person. He could not remember the process of him becoming a player after all the hardships he had gone through to reach D-Class. The gamer was kind. He thought that with Chu Zijin's talent and her relationship with Chief Chun, she would definitely be a core member of Chief Chen's team. He went to the pavilion closest to Chief Chun and established a relationship with Chief Chen. In the future, he would have the opportunity to become a peripheral member of Chen Guang's team. This was a benefit that others couldn't be envious of. He didn't get any benefits, and he committed a taboo. Chu Zijin's memory was erased because of this incident. She couldn't remember what the gamer had said to her. Now, she recovered her gamer identity in memory. She appeared as a level A warrior. Just now, when her body was gradually taking shape, the memories surged in like a tidal wave. Only then did she know what had happened during this period of time. She understood that in the past 2 months, there were many changes in the world that she didn't understand. She was a gamer from the beginning. It was just that she had been locked in an independent mission space. It was as if everything had happened in her sleep. Moreover, while other players had retained their memories and were doing well, her mind had been locked. Every time she participated in a mission, her memory would be isolated. She had only recovered now. The story of all this started half a month before the game's arrival. They had experienced the slaughtering world with Chen Guang. Under Chen Guang's care, they had grown rapidly in the extremely special slaughtering world, completing 2 awakenings at an unbelievable speed and becoming C-rank players. Moreover, they were blessed by the heavens with unique abilities and talents. The confusion on everyone's faces was because they were recalling these things. So many unexpected things had happened in this period of time. The 7 of them ignored the crowd in front of them and turned to look at the palace in the center of the city. That was Mr. Chen's residence, right? How strong was he? Chapter 1248. Another few minutes passed. Seeing that the masters of the 7 great castles were being unreasonable, the numerous players who had intended to bow their heads could only quickly and resentfully retreat. Everyone either had some items on hand waiting to be sold, or had saved up enough reward points to purchase some treasures that matched their abilities. They didn't know what the mission this time would be like. Perhaps they would have a slim chance of survival. Even if they could slightly increase their own strength, it would be good. At the very least, those who didn't have items to sell and didn't have reward points to purchase items would at least want to stroll around the market and see if there was anything they fancied. If possible, they would promise more generous rewards. Both sides could agree on a place to meet again before trading. The distribution of this strange city was quite orderly. Although there wasn't any difference between each E-rank coffin, this wasn't a problem for humans. The players agreed to use the tallest statue of the naked man as the north, and then according to north, south, east, and west, they divided the area into 4 areas, A, D, and D. Afterwards, they broke it down according to the distance from the central palace, and then divided each area into 9 blocks from 1 to 9. Both sides could agree on a secret signal and agree on a place to meet next time in a certain area, which row, and which latrine house with eaves. At the very least, even if they didn't gain anything in the market, they could at least make some friends. Perhaps everyone would be assigned to the same space for this mission. When the time came, they could make some connections outside in advance. At the very least, they could have an additional ally at the start of the mission. Although this kind of temporary alliance wasn't reliable, and there were many cases of allies backstabbing each other in the back, no matter how fragile an alliance was, it was better than nothing. It was better than making contact with complete strangers. As for the 7 great castles that were revered by the people, they all walked towards the palace in unison. Lu Fei, who had originally only vaguely guessed that the strongest person in the slaughtering world was Chen Guang, was now certain in his heart. That archmage right Chen Guang who deserved a beating, that shameless Chen Guang. You really deceived me miserably. I knew that a magister from another world wouldn't be so simple as to just be an idle boss. You must have a purpose. This game must have been created by you. Are you doing this to return to your world? Are you trying to abandon us all? See if I don't teach you a lesson. Lu Fei clenched her fists fiercely. I, your sister, am different from before. I'll let you have a taste of the power of the second block. It was guaranteed to be 10 times or even 100 times more powerful than those so-called masterpieces made from super silicone gel. Cough, cough. For some reason, Lu Fei's steps were a little light. Almost at the same time, 7 people appeared outside the palace. At this time, the area was empty. Almost all the other players had gathered at the trading area. Chen Guang, on the other hand, couldn't make up his mind in the palace. Should he summon these people in and make them his subordinates? Needless to say, Chu Zijin and Sister Lu Fei were both trustworthy people. But as for the others, it was worth discussing. Although they were all A-class, in terms of actual combat power, the amount of help they could provide him was rather limited. He was a level S expert, and these people were far inferior to him. In a high-intensity battle, they wouldn't be of much help and might even become a burden. For more information, please refer to the first slaughtering world. When the 7 of them arrived, they looked at each other. Only Rubber Gal and Peasant started chatting softly. The other warriors stood behind them and didn't say a word. In the slaughtering world, Mr. Dang was the friendliest to Peasant and Rubber Gal. It was obvious that he was old acquaintances with the 2 ladies. Furthermore, although Chen Guang's appearance and figure were completely different from the slaughtering world, there was a voice in the hearts of the 7 that told them that the 2 of them were the same person. They didn't understand how Mr. Dang changed his appearance to that of Chen Guang in God of Joy. Perhaps it had something to do with the birth of the game world. He played a big game of chess. What was he plotting? Even the most arrogant genius high school student had the illusion that their fate was in someone else's hands and that they were completely in someone else's control. It didn't mean that he didn't want to surpass Dang Wu or Chen Guang, but he knew the chances were slim. Instead of trying to surpass him in vain, he might as well make use of the opportunity he had gotten to know him in the game from the very beginning and become his lackey. There were 7 of them, including Dang Wu himself, so there were 8 of them. To others, the price of a team contract for 8 people would probably be sky high, and they wouldn't be able to afford it all. However, to Mr. Dang, it was definitely not a problem. There was only one problem. Was he willing to accept them? Peasant, if I'm not mistaken, your real identity is Chief Chu of Tianguang Media? You were the one who leaked the video. Lu Fei lowered her voice and used a special technique to speak softly. Chu Zijin nodded and said, "It's me. I know your sister Lu Fei, and I've heard of you in real life. It's a pity that I didn't have the time to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here. This is fate. We're both as women, so we're on the same side." Lu Fei laughed. Chu Zijin blushed and said, I have nothing to do with him. It was Lu Fei's turn to be shocked. It can't be. I saw Tianguang Media's report on television. You're a delicate little beauty. Why would he let you go? This isn't his usual style. Sister Lu, you're joking. There's nothing between me and the boss. Forget it. That's not important. I just don't know what's going on in this guy's head. It seems that the 7 of us are indeed a little different from the other players. Lu Fei turned her head to look at the surroundings. She was thinking about how Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan, whom she had met once on Mount Baylor and had a fortuitous encounter together, were faring now. Based on what the 2 little girls had shown, they were definitely players as well, right? The vicinity of the magnificent imperial palace was empty. Only the bustling sounds of people could be heard from the distant market. I asked around on the way here just now. They said that although most players are solo players or in small teams, many large organizations in the real world have expanded their organization structure into the game. For example, in China, there's an organization called Heavenly Division. It is very powerful. The elven archer behind Chu Zijin and Lu Fei couldn't help but speak after there was no movement from the Imperial Palace. Heavenly Division? Lu Fei and Chu Zijin muttered softly. They felt that the name was both familiar and unfamiliar. A name appeared in the hearts of the two of them, but there was a strong sense of distance between them. Isn't it called Tianguang Media? Chu Zijin seemed to be talking to herself, but also seemed to be asking someone else. Lu Fei was about to nod, but she subconsciously shook her head, as if the Tianguang Media had never existed. The hale and hearty old man who had been silent all this while expressed his opinion. I know this division. It's called the Heavenly Division. After this mission, I'll ask Mr. Chun. If he agrees, I'll join the Heavenly Division. He's the minister of the Heavenly Division. He definitely wants us to join the Heavenly Division. A middle-aged man, with the demeanor of a soldier behind the old man, said loudly, "That's right. It's our duty to obey military orders. Even if it's not in the game, we'll still follow orders in real life." Lu Fei asked, "Wait, you're saying that Chun Guang is the minister of the Heavenly Division?" "That's right." The old man nodded. Lu Fei felt that her thoughts were a little messy. She vaguely remembered that Chun Guang had a nickname called Swollen Chrysanthemum. Back at Mount Baylor, Wu Miaowan often used this nickname to tease Chun Guang. Then he should be the director. But it didn't seem like that had happened. At this time, the palace gate finally opened. Chun Guang slowly walked out and stood in front of everyone. The old man and his two followers, the middle school student and the archer, bowed in unison. Chu Zijin and Lu Fei, who were familiar with each other in real life, didn't seem that afraid. However, their behavior was much more respectful. Chun Guang had already made a decision. He walked forward and pointed at Lu Fei and Chu Zijin. "You two will team up with me. This is the team contract. Take it." Then he pointed at the old man and his followers. "If I'm not wrong, the three of you are from the military, right?" "Yes, Mr. Chun." The old man bowed and said, "Mr. Chun should have seen me before." Chun Guang squinted at him for a while and thought about it. "You're not old, but you're not young either. You should be the old man who sat at the end of the table when I attended the meeting in Yanjing." "Yes, it's me. But as long as Mr. Chun is willing to let me join the Heaven Division, even if I have to start as a small soldier, I won't say a word." Chun Guang smiled. "That's not necessary. Whether it's your battlefield experience or your current A-level strength, you're one in a million. I won't use a small soldier to humiliate you. How about this? I'll allow you to open a special combat team in the Heaven Division. Your position will be second only to me and the two deputy ministers. What do you think?" "Thank you, Minister Chun." In fact, when the old man said that Chun Guang had seen him before, Chun Guang had already guessed the old man's identity. However, he didn't call him out because he wanted to protect him. Tan Zhaohua, the commander-in-chief of Shun's special training camp, was considered a relatively young and vigorous person among the old men. Many years ago, he was the king of soldiers on the battlefield. Now that he was old, he had become the commander-in-chief of Shun's special training camp. In these years, he had trained many special combat elites for the country. Even China's most elite teams, such as Dragon's Fang, Spirit Blade, and Piercing Wolf, came from Shun's special training camp. Of course, after Chun Guang personally became the chief instructor and started a batch of training, the elite soldiers produced by Shun's special training camp rose to another level. Apart from the members who entered the Heaven Division, there were also many soldiers scattered in various departments. When he first met Chun Guang, Tan Zhaohua never thought that one day he would become his subordinate. But now that it really happened, old man Tan didn't resist at all. After making arrangements for these people, Chun Guang turned his head to look at the last middle school student. The middle school student didn't seem very submissive. Instead, he looked straight at him with a face full of expectation. Chun Guang smiled. "You little brat, I don't know you very well, but I think very highly of you. If I rashly let you form a team, I'll be adding more restrictions to you. Rather than that, I'd rather let you go and let you develop freely. With your current A-rank realm and that special ability of yours, as long as you don't provoke a god emperor like Yu Ting, I'm afraid the Protoss won't be able to do anything to you." The middle school student laughed. "But I want to follow you more. It'll be easier that way." Chun Guang waved his hand. "Before you say something like that, think carefully first. Do you want to touch and surpass your own limits? Or do you want to be a carefree person? Following me will indeed allow you to start off faster and avoid many dangers, but this isn't necessarily a good thing for the cultivation of your personality. In my opinion, I hope that you can explore it yourself. But if you really want to rely on me, of course I don't mind. The middle school student pondered for a moment, then turned around and left decisively. Chun Guang thought for a moment, then said from afar, I have an idea to set up a few peripheral organizations for the Heaven Division. When you found a few people you trust, you can come find me again. When that time comes, I'll let you be the peripheral organization of the Heaven Division. You won't have much responsibility, but you'll be able to share information about the Heaven Division. The middle school student was overjoyed. He turned around and said, Thank you, Mr. Chun. Then, Chun Guang looked at the elven archer. Back then, the few arrows he'd shot at her had been extremely painful, which meant that she was still quite capable. However, Chun Guang didn't know much about her, so he wasn't very willing to give her a precious team contract. But if he excluded her now, it would seem unreasonable. Also, back in the slaughtering world, as a member of Chu Zijin's team, she was very cooperative. She could even form a combo with Chu Zijin. Chun Guang thought for a moment, then said to her, I can't give you the team contract for now, but I hope that you can join the Heaven Division. What do you think? The elven archer looked at Chu Zijin with disappointment, but seeing Chun Guang's determined expression, she didn't insist. That's fine. Don't be unwilling. Although there are no players above Grade C in the Heaven Division, there are 100,000 strong people in the Heaven Division. Everyone can communicate with each other and be assigned together. Whether it's personal development or the sharing of resources, it's not something that ordinary people can compare to. Your ability is heavy on offense and light on defense, so you're not suitable to work alone. Your personality is also relatively gentle, so you're suitable to team up with others, unlike that brat who's arrogant. Rather than becoming an insignificant character in my team, it's better for you to create your own dagger team in the Heaven Division. In the future, your achievements might not be inferior to that brat. It was rare for Chun Guang to explain a bit more. Old Tan, who was beside him, also nodded and said, Mr. Chun is the head of the Heaven Division. Becoming a member of the Heaven Division will naturally be under his protection. This made the elven archer feel much more at ease, and her face lit up with joy. Thank you, Mr. Chun. After making arrangements for these people, Chun Guang wanted to lead Chu Zijin and Lu Fei into his palace. Unexpectedly, when the two of them passed by the door, they were firmly blocked by an invisible wall, unable to take a single step in. Chun Guang had an awkward expression on his face. Did this unlucky cup see through his crafty plot? Sister Lu Fei with a rubber body. All kinds of positions. Cough, cough. Forget it, forget it. Looks like even if we're in a team, we can't enter other people's private residences. You two don't need to worry about me for now. Go to the market. I've already notified Xian Qin and Wu Miaowan. You two go contact the Heaven Division's trading group and see if there are any items suitable for you. Since he couldn't complete his proper business, Chun Guang didn't want to delay the two of them any longer. He told them to hurry and find items that could increase their strength, so as to not waste time. As for why he didn't go himself, it was because he felt that with his current strength, it was unlikely that he would be able to obtain any usable items from this kind of trading market, unless a large number of A-rank players appeared among the players. At that time, they might be able to find something they needed. After waiting for another half an hour, accompanied by the inexplicable ringing of a bell in the sky above Cloud City, the countless people gathered in the trading point instantly tensed up. The players who had already completed their transactions were either sitting cross-legged on the ground, closing their eyes and praying silently, or stubbornly looking up at the sky with resolute eyes. The players who had yet to complete their transactions sighed dejectedly. In the end, they still couldn't find the items they needed. Hopefully, this mission wouldn't be too overpowered. Those who were in the middle of a transaction were frantically urging the other party to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. On the other side of the world in a cup, in the endless celestial world, countless gods stood up at the same time. The call from the origin of the celestial world came from the bottom of their hearts. A strong sense of mission enveloped the hearts of all the gods. Another game was about to begin. This time, they must continue to ruthlessly crush the humans. Now, the gods could already feel the benefits provided by the origin of the celestial world. As long as they performed better in the game, they would be closer to the origin of the celestial world, and they would be able to experience unprecedented benefits in their cultivation. Chapter 1249. Different from human civilizations, there were all kinds of temptations. Money, power, beautiful women, handsome men, and even rankings in online games could be temptations for different people in life. Every one of these temptations could make people unconsciously stop moving forward. No matter what industry it was, only those who had no distractions could reach the peak. But even human beings who could reach the peak were still unorthodox in the eyes of the gods. The gods of the endless god realm only had one goal in mind: to make themselves stronger. Even though there were professions such as trade and research in the endless heavenly realm, the fundamental purpose of doing business in the endless heavenly realm was to earn resources and strengthen oneself. Or they could study in the endless heavenly realm. The knowledge in the endless heavenly realm was completely different from that of humans. They researched how to cultivate more powerful mercenary beasts, how to use elemental energy more rationally and efficiently, or how to cultivate magical medicine. These were the areas that the gods were interested in. Even if one was a journalist or historian in the endless heavenly realm, they could find traces of these great existences becoming stronger from the illusions and deeds of other powerful gods and get close to the true meaning of their power. Unlike the chaos of humans on Earth, all the actions of the gods in the endless heavenly realm had only one purpose: to obtain more power. A technological civilization like the humans on Earth was nothing in the eyes of the gods. Not to mention the master gods who owned hundreds of millions of planes. Even the god kings who could only build a few secondary planes could breed advanced technological civilizations in their own planes that were many times more advanced than the humans on Earth. The fundamental purpose of raising a technological civilization was to use the power of these technologies to pry into the mysteries of the laws. The quantum physics of the humans on Earth was just the most basic of the foundations of science and technology in the endless heavenly realm. Now, after hundreds of millions of years of silence, the peaceful endless heavenly realm was once again stirred up. The Origin Will had placed this so-called game in front of the gods. The gods only needed to use a portion of their divine will to form a projection, and they would be able to complete the task. Moreover, as their levels in the game continued to recover, their true bodies in the divine realm would also be able to feel the Origin Will's care more clearly. The primordial laws that were originally extremely far away in the fog would become clearer under the blessing of the Origin Will, as if they could reach out and touch them. Such cultivation conditions were enough to drive many gods crazy. Even the most powerful Lord God would not dare to say that his divine thoughts could be completely close to the primordial law, let alone those divine emperors, ultimate gods, and divine kings. Even if they only had the chance to look at the primordial laws from afar, it was enough to make these gods go crazy. The summoning from the bottom of their hearts was getting stronger and stronger. The gods, who were mentally prepared, slowly opened their arms and allowed their minds to become more active than ever. A sense of joy that went straight to the depths of the divine soul came. The divine thoughts of the gods soared into the sky, passed through the long tunnel, and appeared in the brand new world structure. The mission this time had finally begun. Eighth brother, do you think we'll have a chance to meet that guy called Noon? If not, give me a Chunguang. Those mortals always told me not to be arrogant, that the true genius of humanity, the almighty Superman Chunguang, would show me how powerful he was. Bah, what omnipotent. Superman? How vulgar. Disgusting. Low level. I can't come up with such a vulgar and lacking nickname, even if I use my 10 billion years of life. Shut up, idiot. I've told you 100 million times not to call me eighth brother. Yes, eighth brother. Do you really want to die? I repent to you, respected Lord Eight Directions. The 8 divine emperors no longer paid attention to the follower beside them. Instead, they frowned and looked at the mysterious world in front of them. As for the noisy follower beside him, his mind was still thinking about the incident between Noon and Chunguang. The name Noon came from Wethany. Her purpose was to remind the gods not to let their guard down just because the human players were weak. The experts among humans were indeed unfathomable. As for the name Chunguang, it came from the mouths of many human players. Although this rank A follower had never personally fought against human players, there were people in their party who had dealt with human players many times. Many of them would say this name before they died. It was obvious that Chun Guang's ability held an extremely high position in the hearts of all humans. As for the leader of this party, the youngest of the 10 strongest divine emperors in the endless celestial realm, the expression on his face was exceptionally interesting. Just like a certain someone he had once deeply admired a trillion years ago, the young 8 Directions would always give it his all in whatever he did, leaving no regrets. Even though it was just a game, 8 Directions still put out 200% of his focus and led his team to take root in the game as quickly as possible, developing and growing. Now, the 8 Directions party had become the second strongest party in the celestial realm, second only to Yu Ting's party. He was not convinced. He believed that Yu Ting had merely taken advantage of the advanced party. If he had been the one to lead the advanced party to the celestial realm for the first time, he would have been able to leave more seeds for the endless celestial realm. He would not have been like Yu Ting, who had almost been wiped out. As a divine emperor who led the celestial realm, he had actually been defeated by a pigeon. Wasn't that ridiculous? With the power of the 8 Directions party, what was a mere game to him? In these few missions, his actions did not disappoint his ambitions. However, faced with the scene in front of him, he felt like a cow gnawing on a pumpkin. Even as talented as he was, he still could not understand why such a strange scene would appear. The previous few missions were either about snatching resources or killing powerful phantom beasts. Otherwise, it was simply a competition for survival. There was even a survival challenge that completely restricted all special abilities in the middle of the mission. It was a reference to the games in the human world. That game was called PlayerUnknown's Battleground. The players who participated had to parachute, run away from the blue circle, and hold a gun, etc. In the end, it was 8 Directions himself who relied on his superb reflexes and planning ability to transform into a Voldemort at the last moment and successfully fought against 5 enemies with an 8x scope. Then, at the end of the mission, there's some line like "Great luck, chicken dinner." The 8 Directions Divine Emperor almost failed miserably in this mission. He did not have a good impression of this strange line. Why did he have to eat chicken dinner? There was no day or night in the endless celestial realm. Why couldn't he eat during the day? And why did he have to eat chicken dinner? As a god, he had not eaten inferior livestock for many years. Food that could not enhance his strength was simply a waste of life. But what was this now? What appeared in front of him was a bottomless abyss with a diameter of 10 kilometers. From top to bottom, this abyss was densely covered with countless floating islands. These floating islands were of different sizes and had different sceneries. For example, the floating island that the 8 Directions Divine Emperor was standing on should be at the highest point of the entire abyss. It covered an area of about 1 square kilometer and was covered with green trees. Above their heads, they could even see the seemingly real sun in the sky. In the middle of the island, there was a pool of clear water. The scenery was extremely beautiful. The warm sunlight shone on him, making him feel warm from the bottom of his heart. He had already enjoyed the glory of the celestial realm. In fact, there were countless beautiful sceneries in the dimension that he had created with his own hands. However, now that he felt that his power was greatly restricted, he felt a chill run down his spine. He still had his S-class combat power, but the ability to fly had been completely taken away. In this small dimension, it was as if the rules of flight had been tampered with. Even a god emperor like him could be completely suppressed and could not be disobeyed. This was an extremely small dimension, but the rules here were so strong that even a god emperor could not resist them. It seemed that the content of this game was richer than he had imagined, as expected of an existence that even the origin will attached great importance to. On the other side of the same floating island, 70 to 80 human players had gathered together and were whispering and arguing. Clearly, everyone was at a loss when faced with this novel mission space. The mode this time seemed to be too special. The function of the party contract is to automatically assign us to a space when we enter the mission space. At the edge of the crowd, a man and two women were gathered together. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. They appeared to be quite outstanding. However, they seemed to be a contracted party and had no interest in communicating with other people. They appeared to be unfriendly, and the other players could not approach them even if they wanted to. The one who asked this question was Lu Fei, who had transformed into a rubber girl. Chen Guang nodded. That's right. That's why I cherish the contract so much. I'm not familiar with those people. The price of this party contract is increasing exponentially. If I spend it on these people, God knows how expensive it will be in the future if I want to increase the number of slots. The spaces that Sister Lu and I experienced before were all similar to the Killing World. This is the first time we've encountered such a novel game mission. I wonder what it will be like. Chu Zijin stood at the edge of the floating island and looked down. She looked up again and continued. Above is the sky. Below us, we can vaguely see floating islands of different sizes. I just don't know how deep this abyss is. Chen Guang really wanted to tell her in advance that this was the jumping world. In this old man's humble opinion, it must be jumping down from here, layer by layer. However, he could not say it. The mission description had not been released yet. If he said it in advance, wouldn't people know that he was the one causing trouble? In addition, although he knew that this mission was related to jumping off a building, he did not know how the world in the cup would be reflected. He could only take it one step at a time. Chen Guang turned his gaze to the other side. There was a group of about 20 Protoss gathered together. The man in the middle was handsome. In terms of handsomeness, he was almost as handsome as himself. All right, this guy relied on his looks to make a living. That's too much. He's even more handsome than me. Fortunately, I rely on my talent to survive. In addition, Chen Guang felt a familiar fluctuation from this Protoss. If he guessed correctly, this Protoss's individual strength was even comparable to Yuting's. He should also be a god emperor. Chen Guang sighed. He did not know whether he was too unlucky or too good at attracting hatred. Didn't they say that there were very few S-rank Protoss players? Why did he meet one the moment he arrived? Chapter 1250. While Chen Guang was looking at Eight Directions was also looking at the human players. Although he was arrogant, his character of a lion going all out to catch a rabbit made him never underestimate any opponent. Although he did not know why the Origin will chose such weak human opponents for the gods, he had heard that this planet was born in the center of the original plane with an extremely high realm. Although the human beings who grew up on this planet seemed to be weak, they had unimaginable creativity and willpower. After these few game missions, the terrifying potential displayed by these mortal players still made the Eight Directions Divine Emperors secretly shocked. These human beings seemed weak, even as fragile as ants, but no matter how difficult the mission was, there would always be some amazing people among them who would turn bad luck into good luck, or adapt to various difficult mission environments at an extremely fast speed, and then continue to grow and strengthen. Eight Directions still remembered that in the beginning, these players were only level strength. When faced with the Phantom Beast, they could not fight back at all. However, after a short period of panic, they soon exerted their own abilities, used various ways to exert the strength of the team, and killed the seemingly invincible Phantom Beast. At this time, there was a voice in Eight Directions' heart. If he completely followed the origin will of the heavenly realm, what he should do at this time should be directly and neatly obliterate all the human beings who were unlucky enough to be assigned to the same subspace as him in this mission. But another voice told him that if the person who disappeared for tens of trillions of years was here, he would definitely not do this. As great as he was, he never feared any challenge, let alone any opponent who might possibly challenge him in the cradle. He would even personally help the opponent. He was eager to be challenged, and he was never afraid of challenges. He was even keen to personally train opponents for himself. Just like countless years ago, when he was just a newly born mortal god, not even as good as an ant in the endless heavenly realm, he was found among the living beings and personally given a cultivation method. However, after countless years of cultivation and killing, he finally became a domineering god-emperor from an ant-like mortal god, but he was not even qualified to challenge him, because he had already disappeared in a thin air after leaving behind countless legends. He did not become the next Lord God as the gods had speculated, but inexplicably disappeared at the peak of his glory, leaving no trace. Even though his fans had gone to the ends of the earth, spreading their spiritual power to all the secondary planes and small worlds that he had personally created, they still couldn't find any trace of him. It was as if this peerless genius who had once dazzled the entire endless god world for billions of years had never appeared. Master Bafong, there's something I don't understand. Speak. I don't understand why you don't allow us to attack mortals. They're just ants. How can they compete with us fairly? You don't even understand the characteristics of this mission, but your mind is only thinking about killing people. So what if mortals compete with us? Wouldn't it be enough to defeat them head-on? If you don't have the heart of a powerhouse, fearless of competition, you'll never be able to break through to the king realm. This subordinate understands. In the distance, Chen Guang pricked up his ears to eavesdrop on the conversation, and a smile appeared on his face. It seemed that the 8 Directions' divine emperors were not bad people. They knew how to restrain their subordinates. In this aspect, they did a better job than Yu Ting. After a while, Chen Guang finally heard the long-awaited electronic beep. The mission had begun. The beep was very concise. The jumping challenge will begin in 5 minutes. Jump off the floating island before the obliteration barrier descends and successfully reach the next floating island. The beep was very brief. Both the humans and the Protoss players were confused. 5 minutes later, however, everyone no longer had the time to wonder. Roughly 30 meters above the players' heads, a multicolored screen of light appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, the screen rapidly enveloped the players below. The towering trees on the floating island were the first to bear the brunt of the light. Then, under the dumbfounded gazes of the players, the trees disintegrated into fine powder at an extremely fast speed. This damn thing will kill you if you touch it. A young man in the crowd suddenly clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, "D***MN, I understand now." The people around him turned to look at him. "What do you understand? Isn't this 100 floors for men? What's that?" "It's a little game that was popular a few years ago. You have to keep jumping down. If you're slow, you'll be blocked, or if you hit something, you'll die." Another person who was born in the 80s came over and nodded repeatedly. "Oh, yes, I played that game back then. It's quite similar to what we're seeing now. What else is there to say? Hurry up and jump down." Looking at the so-called obliteration barrier that was getting closer and closer, everyone's hair stood on end. Not to mention the trees, even a few hills nearby were instantly flattened by the obliteration barrier. Fortunately, they had 5 minutes to prepare. Both the human and Protoss players had arrived at the edge of the floating islands. However, when they poked their heads out and looked down, they hesitated for a moment. The distance between the floating islands was too far. It had to be at least 200 to 300 meters. Even a cat would not be able to survive jumping from such a high height. What was even more infuriating was that the 2 floating islands were not completely aligned with each other. They were at least 100 meters apart. This meant that if they jumped from here, not only would the height be terrifying, but they would also have to jump forward. Otherwise, who knew how deep the abyss they would fall into if they jumped directly over it? However, they did not have much time to hesitate. The obliteration barrier above their heads was getting closer and closer. No one wanted to test if this light curtain that contained the power of the rule could really disintegrate them. When they were less than 5 meters away, the Emperor God of 8 Directions took a deep breath and waved his hand. Jump! Be careful not to use too much force. We'll meet at the next floating island. As he spoke, he turned his head to look in other directions. Seeing that the mortals were still hesitating, he sneered. Perhaps there would be a strong person among the mortals who could rival him sooner or later, but it would definitely not be this group of people. Just as he was thinking about this, a man and 2 women suddenly jumped out. The man was in the middle, and the 2 women held his hands from both sides. They took the lead and jumped straight down. The arrogance on Emperor God's face disappeared instantly. Although he did not deliberately compare himself to them, he did not expect that there would really be humans who would dare to jump with him first. The actions of these 3 people were like a silent slap to his face, making him lose face. Not only that, but the mortal players who were originally standing beside the 3 people also seemed to be encouraged by the 3 people and followed suit. The 20 or so Protoss players who reacted half a beat slower actually fell behind. No longer caring about his anger, the Emperor God of 8 Directions said loudly, "Jump!" This so-called jumping challenge is likely to be based on the landing time. Hearing that, he hurriedly jumped after them. After flying into the air, he subconsciously wanted to use his divine power to fly. However, as soon as this thought came to him, the divine power in his body was suddenly cut off by an inexplicable force, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. This was indeed the power of the rule of absolute flight restriction. That was not all. After he flew into the air, a new prompt suddenly appeared in the mind of the Emperor God of 8 Directions. This prompt was a GIF, which people on Earth called a GIF. The GIF was a video of a Chinese female athlete participating in the 2008 Yanjing Olympics, and the mysterious mission space actually asked him to perfectly replicate this action. The Emperor God of 8 Directions was about to follow the prompt when he heard a scream coming from above him. He subconsciously looked back and saw that when one of his subordinates jumped out of the floating island, his clothes were too complicated, and the hem of his clothes was hanging on a sharp stone at the edge of the floating island. This slight delay immediately caused half of the sea-level Protoss player's body to be enveloped by the obliteration barrier, and then he was completely torn to pieces without any struggle. Feeling that the spiritual imprint of this subordinate had completely disappeared, the Emperor God of 8 Directions' expression suddenly became extremely serious. Skill score 0, art score 0. Warning player, Emperor God of 8 Directions. Consecutive 0 points will be directly obliterated. The mission space's prompt came again, and the Emperor God of 8 Directions' expression finally changed. Because he was distracted just now, he could not repeat the action and was actually warned by the system. An unprecedented sense of crisis rose from the bottom of his heart. It was obvious that this non-combat mission space was more dangerous than any previous ones. Chapter 1251. This game mission is too playful. Is that all? We have to jump off a building and perform diving maneuvers at the same time? Lu Fei teased Chen Guang, who was in front of the other gamers. Though she hadn't received professional training, she was flexible due to her love of sports. Moreover, she had been nourished by Chen Guang in the outside world. Now that she was a level A gamer, it wasn't difficult for her to imitate the diving maneuvers. Don't be careless. I don't think it's that simple, Chu Zijin reminded solemnly. Chu Zijin reminded him with a solemn expression. As she spoke, she did a 720-degree turn in the air before spinning in a circle. Technique points 10. 0. Art points 10. 0. Congratulations to Peasant for obtaining the perfect maneuver bonus. 10 reward points. Peasant raised his eyebrows and said, I got 2 10s. I got 10 reward points for nothing. Chen Guang and Lu Fei turned their heads to look at her. With Peasant's petite frame and her amazing coordination and flexibility, her maneuvers were the standard of an Olympic gold medalist. In comparison, Chen Guang, who was more than 185 meters tall, looked stiff. However, Chen Guang didn't really care. This was just the beginning. At least it was better than the first Protoss, whose pants were too long and hung on the floating island. Speaking of which, it was strange. The Protoss had clearly died far away from him, but Chen Guang's heart had sensed at the moment the obliteration barrier swept past him. He felt that there was a layer of energy in the independent green-in-the-glass world. The obliteration barrier should have shattered the god into the most basic ions in an instant. At the same time, it should have disintegrated his divine power into the most primitive energy. Then, the god should have completely ceased to exist. Why did the green-in-the-glass world seem to have been stuffed with something new? Chen Guang was puzzled. As he followed the gift that popped up in his head, he pondered in his heart. At the same time, he spread out his mental strength slightly to investigate the characteristics of this additional rule-bending energy. Not long after, he came to a sudden realization. If he remembered correctly, this seemed to be very similar to the mysterious energy that appeared in his body after he absorbed the power of the dead Protoss after fighting against the giant mosquito array in the slaughtering world and then bursting out a colorful fart. Based on the distribution of human players, there are close to 10 million players in this small mission world, so there should be around 150,000 similar mission spaces in the Jump Off the Building Cup in-world mission spaces. There was an unlucky Gue Shun in his mission space. There were 150,000 mission spaces in total, so there must be other Gue Shun races that were unlucky. Then, after this mission, how many Protoss would be obliterated, and the barrier would collapse and turn into this strange energy that was left in the world in the cup? With this question in mind, Chen Guang landed on the next floating island. He jumped first. And, of course, he landed first. When he landed, he received a notification that, as a warrior who successfully landed, he received an additional reward of 10 bonus points. During the entire process, each person performed at least 5 to 6 sets of actions, so he didn't receive the most bonus points. Between the two grade A gamers, Peasant and Lu Fei, Peasant had a total of 6 perfect scores, and Lu Fei had 4. Chen Guang felt that it was unfair and not okay. The rating system was very strict. It was too much to ask a man like him to perform the actions of a female diver. Forget it. I'll just adjust my breathing and continue jumping. He had a new discovery. The gravity coefficient in this mission space seemed to be different from that of the outside world. It was not as much as 1g. At most, it was only 2g. As a result, although the two floating islands seemed to be far away from each other, the impact when they landed was not that exaggerated. Apart from this, when he was about to land, he could clearly feel a rather gentle cushioning force coming from the world in the cup, further slowing down his momentum. This was normal. Otherwise, falling from such a height, even if it was only 2g, an E-rank player would still die without a burial site. All right, if there's nothing else, let's rest for a while before continuing our jump. Chen Guang peeked out from the edge and saw that the floating island was only 10 meters away from him. It was very close. However, he felt that it was quite dangerous because the island below was too small. It was less than 5 meters by 5 meters in radius. That meant that even though the distance was close, he might accidentally jump askew. As he was thinking, he heard a heart-wrenching scream from the side. It was an unlucky guy who jumped askew. The poor guy waved his hands and feet as he fell further and further away. He became smaller and smaller, and he disappeared into the abyss below. Chen Guang mourned for him silently. He didn't know what would happen to him after he died, but his scream was too pitiful. Be careful. The gravity might change again if you jump down from here. Don't use too much force. If you notice something wrong in the air, you can adjust your posture or think of other ways to adjust your landing point. Lu Fei said, "All right, you have the final say. I have an idea. First, jump on the spot and feel the gravity. Then jump? That's great." Lu Fei even used her rubber ability to pull Chen Guang off the second floating island and then bounce back. This time, the three of them didn't rush to the front. Instead, they jumped at about the first 20 places. However, the people who jumped first were in tragedy. They thought it was the previous 0. 2G and jump lightly. The result was that they screamed and fell straight into the abyss. The smarter ones steadied themselves. They first observed the situation of others, focusing on Chen Guang and the other two. They observed the momentum of the three of them when they jumped and then used their strength. With a loud rumbling sound, Chen Guang and the other two landed on the third floating island in the order of 7, 8, 9. This time, although the three of them didn't get the first drop reward, Chen Guang got a perfect score. Xu Zijin and Lu Fei also got a perfect score. The reason was simple. The distance was too close, the gravity was too strong, and the falling speed was too fast. It was only enough for them to do a set of 3-meter board diving. As soon as the three of them landed, they quickly put their attention on the top of their heads. They moved to the inner side and tested the gravity at an extremely fast speed before continuing to jump. The third floating island was too small. If they didn't leave now, they might be smashed by the people falling from above. Before jumping, the three of them turned to look at their sides. Miserable, truly miserable. Whether it was the human players who landed first or later, they were all miserable. The top C rank experts were barely able to stand, while the D rank players were sprawled on the ground. As for the E rank players, they were in a miserable state. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Those who were lucky were hanging on by a thread and hurriedly used their reward points to prolong their lives. As for those who were unlucky enough to have their heads hit the ground, then sorry about that. As soon as Chen Guang and the other two moved, the Protoss players landed in the place where the three of them had just stood. These Protoss players looked at the miserable state of the human players around them and laughed. Lord 8 Directions, I don't think we need to do anything at all. These mortals will die by themselves. The 8 Directions Emperor frowned. Cut the crap. Didn't you see that someone jumped before us? Not only that, but the third floating island also exposed many problems. According to the original judgment of the 8 Directions Emperor, even if there was a suitable buffer before landing, these mortals should have all died on the third floating island. But the result was that these seemingly fragile humans were able to quickly find the most perfect way to land at the moment of life and death, controlling the damage to the minimum. Even if the so-called minimum damage seemed very tragic, in this mission space, as long as one's life was saved, they could use a variety of items that could be exchanged in the shop to recover to their original state. How could the vitality of these ants be so tenacious? Don't delay, keep going. Gathering their thoughts, the 8 Directions Emperor urged again. Don't let your guard down. Including the 2 idiots who just fell into the abyss, we have already lost a total of 3 members. That being said, there are still 2 or 3 unscrupulous Protoss players who deliberately stood in place before jumping, blocking the human players who fell from above, raising their hands, and punching them into the abyss. The 8 Directions Emperor was not happy to see this, but he did not say anything. There was another change in the jump from the 3rd floating island to the 4th floating island. The 4th floating island did not stay in place, but moved left and right. However, this was not a problem for the Super S level Chen Guang and the 2 level A girls. Although the 3 of them could not fly, when they realized that something was wrong in midair, Chen Guang used the Earth Exploder's Arcana to create rocks under his feet. He kicked on them to change the direction of their flight, and the 3 of them landed on the 4th floating island. The few ordinary players following closely behind the 3 of them were also quick-witted. They used all sorts of methods to deal with the situation. Some of them had no other choice but to purchase a hang glider from the system shop while they were still in midair. Although this kind of action was given a score of 0, at least they would not jump crookedly. When Chen Guang saw this, he could not help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. This person's potential was really scary. Behind them, the many Protoss players led by the 8 Directions Emperor followed suit, and they also used all kinds of tricks. The 8 Directions Divine Emperors thought that they were worthy of being the natives of the original plane. These seemingly weak ants were far ahead of the Divine race in terms of flexibility. Not only that, but the E-Class human players who survived on the 3rd floating island also made a prompt decision to spend all the reward points in their pockets on strengthening their bodies. Otherwise, they would use up all the inventory items that could enhance their physique in one go. Quiet Angel, spread your wings and fly down later. It's time to exert your strength. The Eight Directions Emperor thought for a moment, then said to the people behind him without looking back. Behind him, a person in white who looked like a man or a woman made a sound. His body surged with a strange light, and he suddenly accelerated his descent. It was not that this Protoss could forcibly accelerate against gravity, but countless feather-shaped energy appeared all over his body. These feathers were smooth and had no friction at all. They could even accelerate downward with the help of the airflow in the mission space. Quiet Angel stared straight at the back of the mortal players who were getting closer and closer. Her eyes flashed with determination. In terms of combat power, I, Quiet Angel, am indeed very weak, but this mission space is simply tailor-made for me. I never thought that I, who could be said to be a tragedy in the celestial realm, would have a day where I can make a comeback. As long as I can seize the throne of first place in this mission, when I return to the celestial realm, I can truly receive the protection of the Eight Directions Emperor, right? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.